for the commitment and the solidarity that was being demonstrated by so many individuals and groups. I want to say that I don't think we got everyone. We were basing our choices on the nominations of certain folks that were made to us. So I think there were so many small acts of kindness, big acts of kindness, but it does, I think, give us some joy this evening to be able to recognize a number of you. So with that in mind, I'd of course like to note that we're not through this pandemic. We think we're getting there, of course. I think we're near the end, but I am confident there will be many other acts of kindness as we transition our way out or through or whatever the next phase is. But I do want to say thank you on behalf of council and our community to those who are here this evening. And as is the case when we do these awards, we always want to ensure that all of my council colleagues get to have a role. So I'm going to invite Councillor Barkley to make the first expression of thanks for a recipient this evening. So go ahead, Councillor Barkley.
Sorry, I just had to unmute. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm honored to present the first Pandemic Leadership Award to Brett Colpitts and Maria Dunning, who are the owners of local multimedia company Colpitts Media. We all know the impacts of our local businesses faced during the various lockdowns and shutdowns and reduced capabilities. Mr. Colpitts and Ms. Dunning took the initiative and volunteered their time to produce a promotional video showcasing a number of our local businesses, including the Brigadoon Restaurant, Jack's Boutique, Catered Affairs, To Be Continued, Kempfield Family Restaurant, J Glow, Fast Eddie's Diner, Saltastic, and Boss Thai Boxing. The video spread like wildfire online, garnering 10,000 views and over 200 shares in just over 24 hours. As a filmmaker myself, I appreciate the skill that they put into this video. I believe that effective communication really entertains and informs, and this video did both. So congratulations to them, and thank you for using your talents to feature our local businesses.
Thank you, Councillor Barkley. And I don't know if the Colpitts are here this evening or
yeah, they
Mr.
are.
Colpitt. Okay. Anything you would like to say? Brett or Marina, thank you again for your work and your effort.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. It was an honor to work with these businesses and really get to know them. And we're just happy to have offered support in the way that we could. And we've heard from the business owners that it did help. So we're thankful to the community for spreading it like wildfire, because it takes us to put the video out there, but it really took the whole community to continue sharing it and commenting and liking it. And they're the ones who made it spread. It's the community support that really made this stretch so far.
Thanks so much for your comments. We appreciate them. Congratulations again, Brett and Marina. Nice to see you, Marina. Okay. Thanks. We'll move on. Of course, now I'm going to invite Councillor O'Sullivan. Councillor O'Sullivan, for the next award, please.
Sorry, Your Worship, Councillor Strackeryan is going to make this presentation, and I will do the one after that. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, Councillor Strackeryan, up you are.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to present the next Pandemic Leadership Award to Kempfield resident Debbie Amaro. Since the beginning of the pandemic, Ms. Amaro has made thousands of AAA masks, which she has been selling online and at events to raise funds for local food banks. Through her mouth-to-mouth project, Ms. Amaro donated every $500 raised to the House of Lazarus Food Bank in Mountain or to the Salvation Army Food Bank in Kempfield. As of December 2021, she had raised over $6,100. And as an individual and as a family who is sporting many of your different masks, Ms. Amaro, thank you very much for using your talents to make these masks and to donate the proceeds to our local food banks, who have no doubt appreciated the extra funds during these very trying times. Thank you very much.
Debbie, anything you'd like to add?
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for your support. This project wouldn't have even been remotely as successful if it wasn't for the support of the community. I'm going to just keep going as long as it's needed. I've got other little projects in mind when the mask mandate is lifted and masks aren't required, just to keep the ball rolling. It keeps me busy during retirement, and it gives me such pride to live in such a wonderful community.
Thank you so much. And thank you for making such quality masks. We appreciate it. I think now we'll turn it over to Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. The next Pandemic Leadership Award goes to local resident Jennifer Tanner. During the pandemic, a number of charities were not accepting donations. Understanding that COVID had made it much more difficult for vulnerable individuals and families to access goods, Ms. Jennifer Tanner stepped up to connect families with donations by first creating a Facebook group. As donations grew, she set up a community give and take tent on her property that was available 24/7 for any person to use. Word quickly spread throughout the community and people began donating items for other families to receive. From diapers to dishes, beds and toys, people listed items to give away on the accompanying Facebook group. Thank you, Ms. Tanner, for your leadership and compassion.
I don't believe Ms. Tanner is with us. Is that correct? Ms. Babcock Premier, I think she was unavailable. I have that right? Okay.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay. I know that Jennifer has been communicated with in regards to the award, and her husband, Rory, very much appreciated the recognition. So thank you, Councillor Sullivan, for that. I think I'm up next, and this is to recognize two very special organizations who stepped up big time. And as we know, even before the pandemic began, the reliance on food banks here in North Grenville wasn't insignificant, but it certainly hadn't surged the way it would during the pandemic. But despite an increase in demand, staff and volunteers for both food banks were absolutely determined to ensure that clients had access to whatever they needed. And in the case of the Salvation Army, that included fresh foods, meat, pet foods, diapers, sanitary products, as well as other non-perishable items. Through their formidable efforts of, I know, volunteers, staff, and others, the Kempfield Salvation Army Food Bank was very well organized and COVID safety protocols were always maintained. Meanwhile, we also know that the volunteers of the Knights of Columbus Food Bank were quietly working away in the background to service a number of residents, often delivering critical food supplies when required, and as individuals reached out to ask for that support. So we know how critical it is that both of those food banks and the volunteers behind them are recognized, and that food security in North Grenville is an issue. And it was amplified during the pandemic, and I don't think it's going away after the pandemic. So I know both of these organizations will continue to play a critical role. Thank you very much. And I think we have representatives from both the Salvation Army and the Knights with us today. Anyone want to offer anything? Oh, there's Kelvin and Aaron. Kelvin and Aaron, anything you'd like to add?
Well, just wanted to say it's a real honor for us to be included along with all of the caring individuals, businesses, and faith communities and agencies. Our most recent slogan is, "It takes an army," and we're so grateful for the army that has rallied around those in need in our community. As you mentioned already, the volunteers, the staff, the support of the community, donors, funders, and we're just so grateful for all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have a Knights representative. I can't see everyone on the screen. Michelle, hi.
Hi. Listen, this is quite an honor. We thank you for that. But the food bank is, we've operated a food bank in the Kempfield area for well over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And it operates because of the generosity of our community. And we're only here to help the community, and as much help as people are requiring, we're very happy to, to give that help. And because we keep on getting it back from the community, because everything we do goes right back to the community. Now, our phone number, Dave Haberjam is a gentleman who looks after our food bank. His phone number is in the on our website. It's on the municipal website, and it's also in the weekly paper. So once again, we thank you for the honor, and we really thank the community for supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're going to move on to the Deputy Mayor. I think, Deputy Mayor, you are on the line for the next award. Is that right?
I am.
All right.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So given the major disruptions of local businesses during various stages of the pandemic, increased visibility and awareness of takeout, curbside pickup, and online ordering options were crucial in the survival for smaller enterprises. The next Pandemic Leader Awards goes out to the North Grenville Times, who showed an unwavering commitment to these businesses, regularly featuring their stories and the behind the scenes perspective of what business owners were confronting as the pandemic wore on. And as an ever-changing regulations have changed, the disruptions continued. Fostering loyalty to our local business community through powerful storytelling made a difference to more than a few of North Grenville's entrepreneurs. Congratulations.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I don't think the North Grenville Times is with us right now, but they may be joining a bit later. All right. So if that's the case, we'll move on. Thank you very much. The next award goes out to a number of groups and individuals in our community. As some of you recall, it began as a grassroots initiative in Italy early in the pandemic when everyone was confined to homes. There was a movement to bang pots and pans to cheer on our healthcare workers, not just here in Canada, but across the globe. As a consequence, before too long, we heard some pots and being banged in the early hours of the evening as we also moved to show our support. The ringing of bells of various church organizations was a valued addition to this effort, and many residents told council members how comforting they found the sounds of the bells, particularly during periods of shutdowns and lockdowns where people were discouraged from leaving their homes. This Pandemic Leadership Award goes to various groups, including the bell ringers, who showed up every night or every week in support of our essential workers. I will invite my council colleagues to introduce the various groups, beginning with Councillor Strachian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Beginning on March 19th, 2020, a number of individuals in Burt's Rapids began ringing their bells nightly at 7:30. In fact, they have continued each night for over 700 days and counting. It's quite impressive. Endearingly called the Burt's Rapids Noisemakers, it includes the following individuals: Christine and Bernie Bosveld, Beth and John Tilbury, Dorothy Hobbs, Jane Couch, Jane Jeffries, and Lionel Bedard, plus some neighbors and friends who rang their bells when they could. Thank you very much for lifting the spirits of your community and all of those who have had a chance to come out and listen to the bells. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we are going to go to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So this award is really a broader sense of an award, but many of our local faith communities rallied each week to ring the church bells to show the support and solidarity with our essential workers, including St. James Anglican Church, Holy Cross Church, St. John's United Church, St. Paul's Presbyterian Church, St. Andrew's United Church, led by Mervyn and Joan Rumson, Bishop's Mills Pentecostal Church, led by Reverend Randy Jenkins. Congratulations.
And do we have any representatives on the call from those faith communities? Hi, Helen.
Hello.
Say a quick hello.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. We are honored at St. John's and across the street at St. Paul's and with the Anglicans and Holy Cross that were able to come in and out depending on their situation. But I think we rang the bells from the two churches across the street from each other for about over a year. And the ringers that from St. John's that came out enjoyed the opportunity to show the appreciation to all the hardworking frontline workers. And Ray Porter, he was faithful coming every week over for St. Paul's Presbyterian Church. So we're all honored, and it was an honor on our part to show the appreciation to the frontline workers. So thank you.
Thank you for doing it for so long and so reliably every week. Is there anyone else representing faith communities? I just don't want to overlook anyone. Okay. Hi. Oh, I think that's Marvin. Can you just unmute because we can't hear you? There you go.
Oh, she's good.
Yeah, she's trying to unmute. We can see it. We'll just wait for it. The mute button is right on the bottom left, if that's helpful. Josie, right on the bottom left, there's a little button. Heather, are you able to unmute a participant?
No, I'm not, but I have asked to unmute, so they should have a pop-up potentially.
There we go.
There you go. You're unmuted.
Can you see me now?
We can. Welcome.
Hi, it's Ray Porter. I'm from.
Oh, hi, Ray.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep talking.
Yeah, it's Ray Porter, St. Paul's Presbyterian Church. In fact, right across the street from United Church. We enjoyed playing the bells. They rang really well, and on behalf of St. Paul's Presbyterian Church, we'd like to appreciate it. We appreciate this award, and thank you very much.
Thank you again. And I can't emphasize how often people told me how reassuring it was to hear those bells, not just in the town of Kempfield, but throughout the municipality. So we really appreciate that you showed up and you did it the same time every week. It was very, very gratifying and very generous of all of the volunteers who came out so religiously. No pun intended. We'll move on to Councillor Barkley, and thank Ray for also joining.
Yes, it did.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There were two groups in Bishop's Mills who regularly came out to ring the bells in support of frontline workers. The first group is the Bishop's Mills Community Association, and representatives specifically, they're Tom Graham, Victor DeRoche, Joe and Joan Tenson, Hugh Pearson, John Poley, and Mark Robinson. Thanks everyone for showing up time and time again to ring those bells.
Any word from Bishop's Mills?
Maybe I'll say a few words. I'm
Sure.
Victor DeRoche. Hi, Nancy. Thank you very much for this award. It wasn't expected, and it's a very pleasant award. We're very pleased to support our frontline workers at the beginning of the pandemic, and but it was also very beneficial for ourselves. The neighbors able to get outside during this lockdown and to speak to each other and to get some fresh air. It was very, very beneficial for the residents as well. I should also note that the Bishop's Mills also did a small fundraiser. Started off very small, but we raised over $400 for the Bayfield Manor for safety equipment and coffee and whatnot. So we're very honored, and we thank you for the award.
Thank you again, Victor, and thanks for joining us this evening and for your support of Bayfield. Next, we'll move to Councillor O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you. The second group of volunteers who came out regularly in support of the healthcare workers and frontline workers is the Bishop Mills Women's Institute. And this included Jean Lambert, Linda DeRoche, Cheryl McKim, Susan Jenkins, Carolyn Likely, Irene Scott, Liz Straight, Joan Tenson, and Jillian Wainwright. Thank you, ladies, very much.
And I believe we have Jean here, is that right? Hi, Jean.
Hi, thank you very much. Women's Institute's goal is sharing stories and building community. And unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of time to share our stories over the last 2 years, but I hope we're going to have some time to catch up now. But thank you for this award. We're all just doing the best that we can, and I appreciate the acknowledgement. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's all about doing our best in challenging times. So we appreciate all those who stepped up. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that concludes the Pandemic Leadership Awards this evening. There are others that we recognize that can't join us tonight. But once again, this was really about a whole community, and the generosity and the kindness and the thoughtfulness that I think we endeavor to show to each other and to ourselves. And with that, we want to thank all those who were able to join us this evening. And we hope you keep on keeping on, and that we'll be able to see you in person sometime soon. Thanks again for being here. Thanks. So, council colleagues, we're just going to take a 3-minute pause to have our guests leave. I'm just going to transition rooms. So we're going to take a 3-minute pause to reset for our next meeting. Thank you. Okay, I think council, if everyone's ready to go, it's 6:30. We can resume our meeting. I'm just looking for all council faces. Just waiting for a couple. Okay, I see Councillor Strachian, Barkley. Councillor Sullivan, are you with us? Just waiting for Councillor Sullivan. Deputy Mayor, Trust. Councillor Sullivan will be there shortly. Is that right? Okay. So I think with that, we know Councillor Sullivan is joining us. She was just with us. So I think council colleagues, as you know, we started this meeting earlier today with a closed session. Prior to going into closed, we did adopt the agenda. There is currently one item on the agenda, and that is the presentation of the draft budget. I'll look for any disclosures of interest in regards to the item this evening. Any disclosures, colleagues? Perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising? Seeing none. We then will move straight into the presentation of the draft budget. And I believe, Mr. Dyke, you're going to start us off. And Mr. Ogunronde will then continue. Is that right?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Fire away.
Thank you. Tonight is the first of two presentations to Council of the draft 2020 North Granville operating capital, water and wastewater budgets. Over the past 2 weeks, staff have presented a draft budget in 4 separate engagement sessions to the BIA, Chamber of Commerce, local media, as well as two separate sessions for members of the general public. Comments that were received at those sessions have been forwarded and included into your package that you have tonight, Council. From a process standpoint for tonight's meeting, to ensure that there's adequate time for a fulsome discussion and deliberation, we've broken the budget presentation over 2 sessions. Tonight, we will be presenting for Council's review and discussion the 2022 capital budget, as well as the 2022 water wastewater budget. In addition, tonight, we will also present the, the draft operating budget will be presented to Council on March 2nd. Also this evening, a presentation will be made outlining the municipal reserve and reserve funds for Council's information as we move forward. And I just note that senior staff members are here to answer any questions Council may have on the various aspects of the budget, in addition to what is presented to tonight. And with your permission, Your Worship, will turn it over to our acting treasurer, Femi Ugrunde, for his presentation tonight.
Yes,
thank you, Barry.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we could pull up the reserve presentation slide. All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening to discuss the 2022 draft budget as they are presented to Council. And as Gary mentioned, just to get things started, we felt it necessary to talk a bit about the reserves and the reserve fund. So I'll go through a very quick presentation on where we're at and what the plans are for 2022 as regards our reserves and reserve funds. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to go through a bit of some definitions, a reserve is basically created when funds are set aside for a designated future purpose. Usually they're created by a bylaw that is approved by Council. And on the other hand, a reserve fund is created when funds are physically moved from the municipal operating account to a dedicated interest-bearing account, which is also set aside for a specific future purpose. So when reserves or reserve funds are created, the funds allocated to those reserves or reserve funds must be applied within the confines of the reserve description. So meaning that when a reserve or reserve fund is created, its designated purpose is agreed upon at that point in time. And when the funds are being transferred, it's transferred for that specific purpose and not for any other purpose. However, if a reserve fund is created through discretionary means by Council, Council also reserves the right to reallocate those funds if the purpose changes, in the future. So a general classification of North Granville's reserves is in 2 folds. So we have reserves that are set by legislation. We call them either obligatory funds or for asset planning purposes. And we have those set up by Council, which are either for stabilization purposes or as working funds or for specific projects. So in the next slide, I will go through the different reserves and reserve funds that we currently have as of now in the municipality. Next slide, please. So just to give a bit of history before we get into the numbers, the current reserve and reserve fund policy was created in 2016 through bylaw 98-16. And this policy identified the role of council, management, and staff in the administration of the various reserves and reserve funds. But some of the deficiencies we've seen is that the policy did not integrate directly with our asset management plan or long-term financial plan. So to correct these steps, in 2022, staff will develop a robust strategy to modernize our reserves and reserve fund policy from a policy standpoint. Also from its policy standpoint, we will tie this reserve fund and reserve policy to the asset management plan and any future long-term financial plan. And the goal in doing this is to develop a model that assists with future financial planning, integrate the new policy with the strategic objectives from our strategic plan, and to be able to also determine optimal values or levels for various categorizations of our reserves. So when the question comes, are we contributing too much to reserves, or are we using our reserves in the right way? This new policy will help answer those questions. And the new policy will also support effective financial planning as well. So when it comes to questions such as when should we be borrowing, should we be borrowing at all? Is it wise to use our reserves now or later, at a later time? This new model and policy will help answer all of those questions. Next slide, please. So we're going off of the audited numbers from financial year 2020. I would also note that the audit process for 2021 is yet to commence. We expect that will be commencing pretty soon once the budget is completed. So from a reserve fund balance perspective, we have the development charges. So these are credits that we receive from developers for future subdivisions in the municipality. As of 2020 audited closing balance, we had just over 5.2 million in that reserve fund. We also have the cash in lieu of parkland, which is also an obligatory reserve fund with a balance of just over 272,000. We have the campus reserve fund as well. This is not an obligatory reserve fund, but it was set up by council with a closing balance in December of 2020 at 2.7 million. And we also have the North Grandview North Grandview Community Center. In a way, it's an obligatory reserve fund, but not by legislation. This is as a result of a debt arrangement that the municipality has, which stipulates that a reserve fund must be kept for future capital expenditure on the municipal building. The balance as of the end of 2020 in that reserve fund is just over 2.6 million. So from a reserve fund perspective, we have, or we had as at December 2020, a balance of 10.9 million, of which two of these, or three of these reserve funds are obligatory, and one was set up by council for capital project specific needs at the campus. Next slide, please. So from a reserve balance perspective, we have a categorization for stabilization and contingencies. So a working fund reserve with a balance of 1.8 million, a debt retirement reserve with a balance of just over 55,000, one for corporate services with a balance of 2.1 million, a contingency reserve with a balance of 437,000, policing reserve at 120, a waste management reserve at 913, a reserve for the County Road 43 project, not including the water and sewer piece, at just over 969,000, and one for road maintenance, just over 321,000. And the other categorization, we have a specific reserves for projects. The Ferguson Forest Reserve Fund at 100,000. The federal gas tax, which is obligatory as well for specific capital needs, at 143,000. The Oxford Rideau Park roads at just over 46,000. The government grant, which is actually the OCIF government grant, also an obligatory reserve at just over 13,000, and one for economic development at just over 7,000. Next slide, please.
Femi?
Yes, Your Worship.
I apologize, Mr. Ogarande. I just wanted to ask council colleagues if they had any questions, because I know this is a lot to get through, so I just wanted to make sure. Council colleagues, are we good up to now in terms of the reserve information? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, Mr. Ogarande, you can continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on the operating side of things, we have the volunteer firefighters honorarium reserve at over 137,000. As per the policy, we should have a vehicle and fleet operating asset planning reserve, but that has not been set up yet as of now. The public works at just over 2.3 million, one for recreation at just under 500,000 at exactly 496,790. One for the planning department at just over 71,000. The building department reserve fund is actually by statute as well, in the sense that the building department is funded 100% based on the permit fees that they receive. And in any year where the expenses of that department are over the revenue received, the reserve is used to stabilize that department in any given year. And if there's a surplus in any given year, that surplus is transferred to the building department reserve as well. And lastly, we have the emergency and protective services at 431,000. So from a municipal reserve perspective, the balance at the end of 2020 was just a little over 11 million. Next slide, please. And then we have other reserves as well, which form part of the consolidated accounts for the municipality, but are not necessarily under the direct control of the municipality. So what this means is that they are controlled by council, but not directly by the municipality. So the Police Services Board, which is a separate organization from the municipality, at just over 22,000 at the end of 2020. And for the library as well, at just over 63,000 at the end of 2020. And on the water and wastewater side of things, which is also a self-funded department within the municipality, a balance of 7.7 million at the end of 2020. So from a total reserve perspective, reserves and reserve funds, at the end of 2020, we're just under 30 million at 29.8 million in reserve and reserve funds. Next slide, please. So from a reconciliation perspective, just to give some context as to how and what our balances will look like, taking into consideration the impact of the 2022 budget. This actually was a question that came up during the second public engagement session that we had last week. So if we look at just the available reserves to the municipality, highlighted in this table, we have a balance of 10.1 million. And so far, we're estimating that the surplus coming from operations or from the municipality in 2021 will be about 2.5, 2.6 million. We're also estimating that there will be a 2021 capital draw from reserves to fund the projects undertaken in 2021 to the tune of 3 million. And as part of the 2022 budget, we're projecting a capital draw of just over 4 million on the capital budget side. And when we talk about the operating budget next week, we'll also see there's a projected operating draw from reserves to the tune of 1.3 million. So taking all of this into consideration, we're looking at a closing balance at the end of 2022 of reserves of 4.3 million. Next slide, please. Okay, so this actually concludes the very summarized high-level presentation of the state of the municipal reserves. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any concerning the reserves.
Council colleagues, is there anything? Yes, I see Council Berkeley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Algarende, for that. You know, I've been looking for some information on reserves for quite a while. I noticed that you described some of these funds as regarding asset planning, but one of the deficiencies, I guess, in the current strategy is that it doesn't tie in the asset management plan or the long-term financial plan. So how were those numbers arrived at in years previously? I know you've only been here a short while, but I'm just curious if they were allocated or described as asset planning, reserves for asset planning, how was that number arrived at, or how were funds contributed? Can you shed any light on that?
Mr. Algarende?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. So what we've seen in recent past is that funds have been transferred in previous financial years as a result of surpluses that had come from operations. So one of two things, either efficiencies from operating activities or the fact that capital projects were not completed in prior years contributed to the municipality or staff having to move those funds or dedicated funds into those reserves. But in recent times, we've seen also that there hasn't been a lot of activity on those reserves. So some of these balances that we're seeing tonight have either been there for 3 or 4 years without much activity happening on them. So it's hard to actually estimate or say what exactly the actual rationale was for actually moving those funds, but on a general basis, it's always been either as a result of efficiencies from operations or the fact that when a capital project was not completed or was deferred for any reason, the funds were moved into those reserves, not directly tied into a planning reason as a result of the asset management plan or the long-term financial plan, but just more as a reactive way of setting aside the funds because of the projects were not completed in that financial year.
Follow up, if I might, Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So in this upcoming review and tying of our reserve strategy to the asset management plan and the long-term financial plan, do you anticipate some of these funds that haven't been active to be sort of collapsed together or put into general reserves? Or I mean, what's going to happen as a result, without being specific, of this new reserve strategy that's anticipated?
Mr. Algarende?
Your Worship. So yes, that's what exactly the new policy will look at. Is the current structure adequate for our municipality and our needs? If the answer is no, it would then be to restructure how we set up the reserves. So, and that would include collapsing a couple of those reserves, keeping the existing ones that are still relevant to where we want to go into going forward. And then looking at the balances as well. How we transfer funds into those reserves? Are we keeping in mind the future replacement cost of assets when we're doing that, or is it just as a result of what's available, right? So these are the questions that the new policy will help us answer. It would also help us answer better if we're using our reserves the way we should use them, or we should actually be going externally to borrow funds. So that's what the review would be answering going forward in 2022.
Great, thank you very much.
Other council colleagues, anything else on this? Oh, I see Councillor Sullivan, thanks. Councillor Sullivan, just unmute yourself, thanks.
Yes, thank you. And through you, thank you, Mr. Ogarindi. I hope I got that right. Are our reserves where they should be with respect to the percentage of our budget? Are we where we should be? And I noticed that there was nothing in there was no reserve for fleets and vehicles. So I just wonder if that's something that we need to have, we should have. So if you could help me understand that, please.
Through your worship.
Yes.
So every year when we submit the financial information report to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, they actually do a survey of similar municipalities and send us ratios that usually tell us where the state of our reserves are at and what the risk level associated with those balances are. And as of 2020, they recognized our risk status as low. But again, that can be interpreted in different ways. They're just looking at the balances as compared to similar municipalities. So it means that we have enough reserves, as it were, but are they for the right purpose would then be the question for us, right? And also on the fleet side of things, last year council approved for the municipality to undertake a program with Enterprise to lease the majority of our fleet going forward. So that's the program we're under now. So as part of this study going forward, we'll be assessing if there's actually a need to still keep a reserve for fleet, considering the fact that we're now leasing majority of our vehicles going forward, with the aim to replace them every 2 years through the leasing program and build up equity that way. So as part of this review, we'll also be considering if we still need a reserve for fleet and equipment based on what the current program is.
Okay, thank you.
And Femi, of course, you're somewhat new to our council meeting. So if you want to pronounce your last name just so we get it right, I'm sure we'd appreciate that.
No worries, happy to do that. So it's pronounced Ogurinde.
Ogurinde, okay, Ogurinde. So we'll get good practice tonight. Thanks for that.
No worries.
Can I just ask a question on the leasing program? So in your estimation, obviously someone had done that analysis about sort of the savings of maintaining some older vehicles or keeping them from 15 to 20 years versus a leasing program that some would regard as more expensive, depending on how you do the math. I'm not saying it is or suggesting it is, but are you prepared at all to comment on sort of the value of a leasing program versus an acquisition one?
I can, through your worship. So on paper, they developed a model that makes complete financial sense. What the model basically explains is that through the leasing program, as long as we continue to flip vehicles every 1 to 2 years and keep the real value of the vehicle in the municipality, we build up equity basically through our fleet. But we're yet to see that materialize, not through any fault of Enterprise, but through COVID, basically, and the shortage in supply of vehicles. But they're still positive because we continue to meet with them on a consistent basis to just check in and make sure that this still makes financial sense for us. They're positive that we will realize some equity as we go along. But between SMT and finance, we've decided that after 12 to 18 months in the program, we will review where we're at currently and see if we're starting to realize that equity that was promised to us as per the model. And if not, staff at that time will bring forward a report showing the assessment and making a recommendation for council to approve.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council colleagues, on the reserve strategy or the leasing program? Deputy Mayor, are you itching to get in there? Or? I don't think so. Okay. Did I misread you, or are you good? Okay, all right. So I think then we're fine and we will move on.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll jump straight into the capital budget at this time. Okay, next slide, please. So as part of the 2022 draft capital budget that's being presented tonight, I wanted to talk a bit about the impacts that we've seen in the preparation of this staff recommended budget. The first one is the level of service. So as part of this budget, we've made or proposed investments that we believe are required to continue to maintain the existing levels of service. Also, investments required to keep up with the growth demands in our community. We've also factored in the impacts from municipal resources, particularly the human resource side of things, because we believe this greatly impacts our ability to start and complete projects. On the long-term financial plan, we're due an update on our long-term financial plan in 2022. But as part of this budget, we've relied on the recommendations from our asset management plan. And we'll see that impacting the list that staff are bringing forward tonight. Also, recommendations from various studies, reports, and assessments that have been undertaken by the departments have also been factored into this presentation. And on inflation, we've seen that inflation has moved quite aggressively in 2021. And there are no signs currently that this will be slowing down in 2022. So this overall affects the prices of services and contract work that's available to the municipality. And this has also been factored into this budget that we're presenting tonight. So as part of the budget process, as Mr. Dyke mentioned, staff conducted 2 public sessions to engage the community on the budget. And we received feedback, which has been reported to council as part of the package tonight. And also the impacts from COVID as well. We're hoping that as we start to see restrictions being reduced, this will continue to have a positive impact on the municipal operations as a whole. And lastly, on the modernization front, there is investment in this staff recommended budget to continue to further modernize our municipality. Next slide, please. So for the 2022 budget year, staff are recommending 2 major projects to be brought forward as part of this budget. The first one is the County Road 43 Rehabilitation and Expansion project, and the second one is the Riverside Expansion project. So just to note also as well that both projects are multi-year projects, and they will be requiring funding beyond the 2022 budget year. These projects are also reflective of our strategic objective, which is to manage the growth in North Granville in a sustainable way. We believe this project, along with the other projects that staff will be recommending tonight to council, will highlight the investment that we need to make going forward to manage our growth. And just touching a bit on the County Road 43 project, this project will be administered through the county and flowed to the municipality through the Public Works Department. to pay for our own portion of the project costs. Staff will be bringing further details on this project and the specifics when they become available in coming months. And the Riverside project will be administered through the Parks and Recreation Department. The detailed design work on this project started in 2020. We believe that upon approval of this budget, construction tendering will commence. And I'd also like to identify that the Riverside project has been highlighted as a growth project to the municipality. So the impact means that a large portion of the funding for this project will come directly from development credits. Next slide, please. So as part of the listing of the projects that we're bringing forward tonight, we'll see that the Public Works Department is at 3.9 million, the Parks and Recreation at 2.1, other projects at just over 327,000, the North Granville Municipal Center building at 165,000, and Emergency and Protective Services at 65,000. So this is a total investment of just over 6.6 million for the 2022 budget year. And just splitting all these projects into categories, we have the roads at 3.2 million, the Parkland Rehabilitation project at 1.5 million, fleet and equipment investment at just over 700 or exactly 750,000, sidewalks at 260,000, building renovations and rehabilitation at just over 500,000, streetlights at 37,000, and other capital projects at 291,000. So just as Mr. Dyke mentioned, we have the department directors here to speak to the specifics of the departmental projects. But just jumping into the next slide, please. We'll talk a bit more about the funding that we're proposing for these projects in 2022. So as for the 2022 funding for capital projects, we're proposing a draw from reserve, just over 4 million, a draw from the development charges reserve fund at 1.1 million. We'll also be utilizing our grants program at 1.1 million as well. We'll be drawing from the current year taxation at 220,000 and other revenue at 15,000 to fund all of these investments in 2022. Next slide, please. So just to give a bit of context to the public and council, from the 2022 budget year, I have here a list of projects that are being carried over by the Emergency and Protective Services. The Fire Station 2 preliminary work at 60,000, and for facilities, the Maplewood Hall rehab project at 50,000, and the pool chemical feed valve at 35,000. And on the Municipal Center building, we have the low E ceiling at 95,000, the arena railings at 50,000, and the new reception area at the Municipal Center at 117,000. On the public works side of things, the transfer station upgrade at 9,500, the salt shed at Concession Road at just over 20,000, the Wellington Road design contract admin at 71,000, the Wellington Road pavement to bridge at 839,000, the new PXO at 30,000, the bridge lot 20 concession I-08 River Road at 87,000, the old CP Rail pedestrian trail at 333,000, the sidewalk construction at Judge Street, Oxford Tom Pine Hill at 33,000, and the Prescott streetlight replacement at 150,000. So just carrying over from year to year from 2021, we're moving over already approved projects to the tune of 1.9 million for the 2022 budget year.
Can I just ask a question on that note?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just in terms of Riverside Park, the rehabilitation, That too had an allocation in 2021. We understand that project is a multi-year project. So to that end, I don't see it characterized here as a carryover, even though there was that initial allocation in last year's budget, as I recall, of 750,000. So I'm curious as to why it wouldn't qualify as a carryover.
Yes, so the reason why we've identified it this way is because the Riverside project will be starting construction in 2022. The plans before were to actually start the project in 2021, but because that didn't go ahead, we're actually showing it in this budget as starting in 2022. So in a sense, it's not a new project, but the fact that the construction is starting in 2022, and for presentation purposes, so to make it a bit clearer, we decided to put that in the 2022 budget, showing as a new project for 2022.
Perfect. And just a quick follow-up then, and then I'll recognize Councillor Barkley. The 750,000 that was allocated last year obviously was not spent, is our understanding, just in terms of helping the public understand the nature of that investment. And I appreciate you saying that some of that rehabilitation of Riverside will be funded through development charges. And not everyone understands development charges, of course, but those are additional fees paid by developers, residential or commercial, when they enter the community. So it's an additional, obviously, fee to pay for infrastructure as our community grows. So I appreciate the explanation. And what I hear you saying is that that 750 allocation last year was not spent. And in effect, you know, as a consequence, we're sort of spending last year's and this year's in this year, in a single year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll recognize Councillor Barkley, and I'm just going to zoom out on all of my council colleagues in case there are other questions. Councillor Barkley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Algarunde. I'm looking at this list, and it's quite large in my mind. I seem to recall that a number of projects were deferred to 2021 from 2020 in order to fund some of the COVID response. Is that part of the reason that we're seeing so many projects here? In particular, it seems to me the Maplewood Hall rehabilitation of 50,000 was something that was slated for 2020, and it's carried over now 2 years. So are what we're seeing the results of our COVID contingency fund? That I understand some of it was paid down through provincial grants eventually, but it's a rather long list, and I'm wondering why we have so many carryover projects.
Through you, Your Worship. So I can answer that from a financial perspective, and then I'll have to turn to the department directors to answer from an operational perspective. So when council had approved in 2020 that we defer some capital projects as a result of COVID and the uncertainties around that, we had set aside, in effect, some funds in case we needed to pull on those funds as a result of COVID. But we never got to that stage as a municipality where we had to pull those funds. So the funds were always available for those projects. But as to why they've been carried over for more than a year, now 2 years, I'll defer to the department directors to give more context around that.
So Councillor Barkley, do you want me to go to Mr. Guy on that one then? He's with us
I
this
just
evening.
used Maplewood Hall as an example because I'm most familiar with it, but sure.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Guy. He's in the room with us today. Mr. Guy?
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Barkley. I don't recall, Councillor Barkley, it being in the 2020 budget. I know we had set aside $50,000 in a reserve for Maplewood Hall, knowing that there was work to be done. And it was in last year's budget, 2021, 50,000. But we did receive some early estimates that the project was going to cost much more than $50,000, and rather than mobilized 2 different times, which would cost the municipality quite a bit more. We put the project on hold until 2022, and we've added an extra $100,000. So I think back 2 years ago, and I'd have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it was we had that 50,000 in a reserve for Maplewood Hall specifically.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll recognize Mr. Dyke. I think you want to weigh in, and I'll go over to Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just in a general comment back to Councillor Brockie's comment regarding the projects that were put on hold as a result of COVID. Back in 2020, when we were first hit with the unknowns of the impact on our financial impacts on the municipality with COVID, we actually suspended projects. So we pulled them out and held that money in case we needed it to offset lost revenues or increased expenditures that were unknown to us at the time directly to COVID. As a result of the funding that we received from the province, the COVID funding we received, we did not have to use that funding, but we held it in reserve. And so now, as Mr. Grande said, it now goes back into the project. So we had it to use if we needed it, but because of the funding we received from the province, we didn't actually have to access those funds, and we were able to put them back for their intended purpose.
Okay, that's really helpful. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Ogarindi. Going back to slide 4, on other capital projects at $291,000, can you tell me what's included in that? Because that's a large number, and yet smaller items of 37,000 for lights have been specifically identified by line. So what's in this 291,000 that is other, please?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Sullivan. So we have a detailed list of all of these different project categories in subsequent slides.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be able to speak more to that, or the department directors will be able to speak more to that once we get to that point.
Okay, all right, thank you. And so on the pie chart above it, there's an orange section of the pie with no percentage in it, or no identification of what that represents. Is that, because I think it all adds up to 100%, but there's an orange piece of the pie without any identification. Right there.
Yes, I think that might have been a formatting error. I apologize for that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, I'll learn more about what's in the other as we go on. Okay, carry on. Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is the detailed list for the Public Works Department. So I'm not sure what the process would be at this point. Would the department directors speak to all of the project listing, or does council have specific questions regarding this list?
Why don't we start with whether or not there are any questions? I would also invite Ms. Dunlop to highlight anything here that she feels is worthy of note. Mr. Dyke?
I was just going to suggest that it may be easier for us, and from a time start, if council identified any questions on the projects, and then the detail the directors can provide detail on those projects or answer any questions that come out of those from the inquiries from council.
Yeah, I'll start. In terms of sidewalks, Ms. Dunlop, I'm curious about the George Street project. In terms of its status, I know there are parts of George Street that may be covered through forthcoming development charges owing to the expansion of Bayfield Manor. That being said, I have some concern that we're building a single sidewalk this year in a growing community where there's been lots and lots of concerns about road safety. So I'd be curious to know your rationale in terms of just proposing effectively a single sidewalk and a very modest budget for rehabilitation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The section of George Street, which we started last year, due to the Bayfield expansion, we stopped at the construction limits that they provided within their property. The sections that you see in this, in addition to the carryover values, are the completion of the George Street sidewalk from Pine Hill to Oxford, continuation from Oxford to Dumbrell, and then from Dumbrell to Rideau Street, which will provide a full link all the way from the mall. So the mall on County Road 43, down Pine Hill, across George Street, and into the Old Town and residential areas. That is the limit of sidewalks that we can complete in-house, with the balance of the capital program that's before you, as well as from financial considerations. So they're what we've proposed for this capital budget.
And just quickly, a follow-up, if I might, and certainly I'll go to council colleagues as well, is we know that the new Wellington Road provides an incredibly improved pedestrian experience, especially once Hydro turns on the lights. We're not sure when that's happening. Maybe you can speak to that. But certainly Wellington Road is new and improved and has excellent pedestrian connectivity, especially for those with mobility impairments. So it's been great to see that improvement. There's a critical link, however, from Van Buren onto Bridge, up a short distance next to the truck center, to in fact ensure that people can get safely from Van Buren or that part of town up Bridge and then over to Wellington. So I don't see that there. It seems like a modest investment and a crucial piece of connectivity. So I'm just curious if that was part of your considerations this year, given that it is a short link, it's not a big sidewalk. And the other thing, just quickly, is I know that there are some multi-use pathways that have been identified as being particularly valuable. Some would say urgently needed in the community. We can talk about County Road 44 all the way down to Equinell, County Road 44 in the other direction, on Prescott in front of the campus. Is there anything you want to say on that kind of connectivity? But my first question would be that short link on Bridge Street that really seems to be missing in terms of pedestrian safety.
Thank you, Your Worship. The section on Bridge Street between Van Buren and Parkinson is estimated at capital value of about $170,000. It was not included in this program, based again on finances and the workload. We do have the IPM coming in this year as well that we would like to make sure that we have available resources and we're able to support. The next question you raised was the multi-use paths. We did take into consideration, as we do a lot of the construction in-house for those multi-use paths, save and except the actual laying of the asphalt. So we have included some in future years, but there's none in the 2022 budget as presented. The final question you asked was in regards to the extension of the County Road 44. Now, County Road 44 is included in our draft proposed future budget for 2026. And the idea of that is after County Road 43 is complete, we do not want to create any traffic nightmares from a flow standpoint. We want to be able to create connectivity away from the 43 corridor while the much needed project and expansion of that required link is completed.
Thank you. So I'll recognize Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Barkley. Thanks.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just maybe a quick update from the director. First off, we're getting questions, of course, about the wastewater system and when that's going to be upgraded. What's the spend kind of look like? Where we're going? That's just the first part. If you can give us just a quick summary of that, so the public get an understanding, and also the spend on County Road 43, which of course is highly anticipated as well. What does that entail on our side for spending for the 2022? If you can just kind of give a little outline for the public for that, appreciate it.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. We'll start with the wastewater treatment plant. So the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, which is will be funded through development charges and through other developments that require the expansion of the plant. We have been undertaking the design for the last year and a bit. We anticipate going out to tender within the next few months, budget dependent, of course, for a 2-year construction season. So we hope if we get tendered in March, April, we will be shovels in the ground sometime in the summer for completion 18 to 24 months after that. That will provide many cubic meters of available development capacity within the corridor. The County Road 43 commitment included in this budget, although we are still working with the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville for finalization of the numbers and the cash flow. The commitment included in this proposed budget is a little over $1.8 million. It is anticipated that the first state of business for the expansion is for the new bridge to be constructed just south of the existing bridge over the Kempfield Creek. And that will be followed by sections of road over the next 3 years. So we have a $1.8 million commitment anticipated over the next 3 years. The actual cash flow and final numbers have yet to be finalized, but that'll be done at tender to the tightest. The items that the municipality, so the components, the municipal assets, are a multi-use path on both sides of the road, all the way from County Road 44 to the Colonnade Roundabout. There will be some sidewalk linkages, such as on Colonnade Drive, all the way from County Road 43 to the first entrance near the A&W in Shoeless. There'll also be linkages down County Road 19 all the way to Ryan's Well. So it'll promote those pedestrian connectivities. The other is the upgraded landscaping for the Center Boulevard. The council had a presentation in April in regards to some upgraded landscaping. So that is also incorporated into that project. Hopefully I've answered your questions.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Director Dunlop.
And maybe I'll just say, just on the County Road 43 project, to Ms. Dunlop's point, what the municipality is responsible for is in fact a small chunk, not an insignificant chunk of what is now estimated to be a $38 million project, more or less, coming to County Council shortly. So our investment is notable, but it is to cover exclusively multi-use pathways, trees, lighting, and I think some underground works, Ms. Dunlop, if I'm not mistaken. So to that end, the overwhelming contribution is from the United Counties for both the bridge and the expansion of lanes. So that's, and there'll be more information coming out of our County Council meeting shortly. I have Councillor Barkley still on my list, and then Councillor Strakian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Dunlop. Director Dunlop, I just need a little bit more detail on 3 items on that page in the capital budget. But before I get to those 3 items, I'd just like to ask whether that section of Bridge Street from Van Buren to Wellington, I guess, maybe for Parkinson, does it show up in our long-term financial plan in terms of capital costs? Would it be something that we'd be looking at in 2023, the 2023 budget?
Ms. Dunlop?
Through you, Your Worship. It is included in our sidewalk linkages for the future, but I do not recall the specific year or commitment that was proposed.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later. So I'm looking for detail on 3 items. The school radar, it says temp set. What is that and where is that? The second item is international plowing match, shows up under the capital budget. It's a rather large amount under roads. A little bit of detail on that. And finally, the land acquisition, Prescott Street, road allowance from Hilltop to concession. So could I get a little bit more detail on those 3 items? Thanks.
Go ahead, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to start at the bottom of your list and work up, if you don't mind, Councillor Barkley. I'll start with the easiest first. So the acquisition of some lands and evaluation was for the improved sidewalk between Hilltop and Concession that happened in the 2021 budget. We need to purchase a foot of land in order for the sidewalk to be totally on county property. The next one is in regards to the IPM. So this is an allotment for improvements to a section of gravel trail path between Bedell and Concession to assist not only with the operation of the IPM, but also with select tree removal, some trimming, as well as a permanent base for a trail that would link those two roads in the future. So that would provide that permanent base. And finally, the $7,500 for the school radar temp set is part of our traffic calming program. It's the temporary speed radar signs that you're seeing on various locations around town, that you'll see on the 4x4 posts that we move around every 30 to 60 days to inform people of the speed with which they're traveling in their vehicles and to promote slower and safer speeds.
Just to follow up, if I might, on the international plowing match. So are you referring to, sorry, jumped the gun. Are you referring to the Dickinson Trail of widening it and making an access road, or improving that trail and extending it all the way up to Concession from Bedell? Is that what we're looking at?
That is a component of what the funds are dedicated, are to be committed towards, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Councillors. Mr. Dyke, did you want to get in there on this conversation?
Yes,
before
thank
I
you.
go to Councillor Strachan? Yeah.
Just quickly to on the IPM comments from Councillor Barkley. So it's in the spot here as a placeholder in the budget. We need a place to put it. As we move forward and get a little more detail in dealing with the IPM, it will be separated out, having it in independent accounting and to go with it, and reporting back to council on the expenditures to it. It's just being put in here as kind of a gross amount now based on what we know today. That's a number we're working with. The various components of that will be reported on to council as we move forward into the year and move closer to the event.
Yep. Okay, and everyone may recall that our IPM is September 2022, so it is coming soon. And I'd like to share with council colleagues that counties is making a similar investment in terms of public works rehabilitation for parts that are theirs, as well as generous offer of in-kind staff support in the lead up to the event as well. Okay, I'll go to, I think, Councillor Strachan and Councillor O'Sullivan. I believe that's the order. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for asking the question about the IPM line, Councillor Barkley. I think it's an investment there, but a good time.
Councillor Strachan, I just want to interrupt because your audio is very poor. We can't hear you. I would advise that you turn off your camera.
Can you hear me now?
Off your audio. Try again. Yeah.
Is this any better?
We'll see. It's fading in and out. Give it a shot.
Okay, thank you for clarifying the IPM line. I guess a question that I have in addition to that is the line regarding, or the section regarding roads. When we look at how these are prioritized, there are some that appear as surface treatment and others that are rebuild. I guess those are the main ones, are pavement overlays. And I think, I guess I would just like to understand the difference between those and the timeliness of completing that work. So if surface treatment means it needs to be done now because it's at that stage where we wait longer, then it's only going to cost us more, or something along those lines. If you could please provide some clarification to that, Director Dunlop, please.
Go ahead, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the program that you see before you is the continuation of an ongoing multi-year program, such as the Bolton Road. You see 3 different sections of Bolton Road, and they're at various stages within their construction. The first one, the Bolton Road, Craig to Saunderson, is the intended gravel rebuild section on Bolton Road. But this section between County Road 43 to the tracks is a slurry seal. We did the gravel rebuild 2 years ago. Then the following year, we did the surface treatment. Then we do a slurry seal to extend the expected life of what a surface treated road would be. We have, all the other sections that have been identified here are following that same progression: a gravel rebuild, followed by a surface treatment, followed by a slurry seal. That identifies all the programs you see before you. Scotch Line Road West is on that final year, so it's the preventative slurry seal, as it's the Tompkins Road. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Sarkanian.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Director Donald.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you very much, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Dunlop. Just a couple of clarifications, please. The new PXO, can you tell me where that is? Is that the one that's going to be on County Road 19 or 44? I mean, Van Buren.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The one on Van Buren is actually the 2021 purchase as part of the agreement with the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. It will be installed as soon as the frost is out of the ground and has been ordered, designed, and committed. This location is to be determined depending on cooperation with the active transportation. We do have a few preferred alternatives. County Road 19 is not in the short list for this one, but County Road 44 is a very strong contender north of town or in the center of town.
I think, Ms. Dunlop, you mean County Road 44 near Settlers Trail?
That is correct.
Where there's a lot of activity.
That is correct. We're working with United Counties and the Active Transportation Committee to narrow the priority list.
Okay.
Okay, and the second question is those 30 street lights, are they the ones on Prescott Street?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the 30 street lights are actually a long-term program. The development charges background are identified an expansion to our streetlight program throughout, and that $6,885 gets me 2 lights a year. So they are long-term 30, short-term 2 per year. The $150,000 as a carryover project was the Prescott streetlights.
Okay, so those are going to be done this year?
Yes. Through you, Madam Mayor, of course, budget dependent, but yes, that is the intent. We have the RFP for the shortlist, as discussed with the BIA, to go out within the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, and then I'll put myself on the list.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Just another question. It came up about the IPM. I understand we've set some money aside. That's fine. I don't know if we had, maybe I missed it, that we have more details on what that spend might look like. Is it just some upgrades that we're going to need eventually down the road anyways, or is this specific to the IPM itself? Also, we did, under my understanding, we did give them already $100,000. And don't get me wrong, the IPM will be have great economic impact for the municipality. So a couple of questions are in there, more about the details on the 225, what that spend might be for, and if it's permanent type of upgrades. The other part is, I understand just with a financial background that, you know, the economic impact will be probably substantial. Is the municipality or the IPM people themselves going to do or have done any kind of economic impact study on a municipality of our size? Do they have stats on that, or would we be conducting something similar on a small scale here? Just food for thought. Thank you.
Mr.
Madam,
Or Ms.
Madam Mayor.
Dunlop? Right. Okay, maybe we can speak to the IPM loan, the $100,000 repayable loan. Mr. Dyke?
If I can speak to that, yeah. So that
Yep.
is correct. The $100,000 wasn't a grant. It's a
No.
loan that will be paid back to the municipality with the proceeds of the fund itself. You know, Ms. Dunlop can speak to the specifics of the program as we go forward.
Okay. Ms. Dunlop, I know you gave an initial explanation of some of the IPM investments to facilitate, I think, traffic flows and access to certain properties in and around the municipality, and particularly the campus. Do you want to elaborate further?
As the program progresses, Madam Mayor, Matt Gilmer and myself will be bringing the information back. We are still working through the specific details, but the intent of the majority of the funds that you see here are, again, that linkage between Bedell and concession, and to provide a permanent recreational access point in the future. But there will be many minor and changing components that will bring a full report back to council.
Okay.
The only other part was, and maybe CEO could answer this, just about the economic impact study, or, you know, are we going to borrow from someone else? What's the thought on that? I think residents would like to know. I mean, I think most would understand that this is going to have a great impact, but not knowing exactly what that looks like. You know, is it a few $1 million, you know, who knows? And businesses, of course, would probably want to have a better grip or understanding on that.
Yeah, Mr. Dyke, certainly please take the question. I know that in our dealings with the IPM, they have some very good guesstimates of the economic impacts for the various locations they've held the event across Ontario. So IPM is also working with the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville ECDEV team as they move forward to really harness some of the power of the event and the reverberating impacts over time. So that's just an initial reflection, but Mr. Dyke?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, is that anecdotal, these numbers that are coming from these other communities? Or did they actually do some kind of study to actually put a finger or an actual number on these?
Yeah,
that's part of it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Dyke.
I can speak to that, Deputy Mayor. So yes, it's actual numbers from the previous events. There's a report that comes out following the event that talks about the direct numbers. So it's real numbers that comes out of it. They have projections on like our municipality from what happened in the past, but then following the event, there is the numbers coming back based on the real numbers that come out of our event. And from what we've seen, and council would have seen it, that the initial presentation from the IPM people a year ago now, I guess maybe it was 2 years ago now, with pandemic, that there is a significant economic impact to the municipality. With going back to one of your original questions, the bulk of the cost, as Ms. Dunlop had said, it deals with the upgrade of the Dickinson Trail. So that is a lasting or a legacy project for the municipality. The work is being done to facilitate the IPM, but it's a legacy project for the municipality that increases our trail connectivity through the area from Bedell up into the campus lands, up on the concession as well. So yes, it is a cost to us now, but we will see the long-term benefit from it, both from the short-term use with the IPM, but also from the long-term upgrade of the trail connectivity for the municipality in that area.
Okay. And just reflecting on that initial meeting 2 years ago, I think, Mr. Dyke, when it came to the IPM, the International Plowing Match, the impact is overwhelmingly positive in terms of obviously what's the revenue that's generated here, the investment that's attracted here, et cetera. So, but I'm sure that we can draw on those numbers and share them with council and the community, because that meeting was a very long time ago. And as Councillor Sullivan knows, who's co-chair of the volunteer recruitment committee, with 1,000 volunteers in the community, and North Grenville's largest event ever, with approximately, we hope, 75,000 people. The economic impact to the positive will no doubt be felt. Councillor Strachan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. the IPM, I hope it is as successful as that coming out of COVID. I know there's all sorts of
Yeah.
hesitancy to gather in large groups. So 75,000 may seem very daunting, but hopefully by then we've gotten over the hump and that it'll be encouraging for people to attend. A question for Director Dunlop. Was the Dickinson Trail identified as a priority trail to complete prior to investing via the IPM?
I'm sorry, and are you directing that to Karen Dunlop?
I believe she could answer this, Director Dunlop, if you can.
Yep, go ahead, Director Dunlop.
Thank you. It was one of the ones identified in the Trails Master Plan. It is something that I have discussed with the Recreation Department. It was one of the higher priorities.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Not seeing other hands. Just a quick question, Ms. Dunlop. Charging stations, a $10,000 allocation. I know that some private sector companies are moving to also provide charging stations. Not that we shouldn't be involved as a level of government. Is there a specific location envisioned or partnership envisioned when it comes to those charging stations?
Thank you, Your Worship. The item, the charging stations, as well as the turtle signs, which are identified on the Public Works, were actually asks from the Environmental Advisory Action Committee. So they are looking, they would prefer something at the Municipal Center, but that's what those two specific items are.
And when it comes to charging stations, has anyone assessed some of the private sector interests to also bring charging stations to the community, just so there isn't any overlap? Do we have a understanding? Obviously, we're seeing more and more, and we're seeing some in our community. I don't know if the Councillor Strachan wants to address that, given that she's on the Environmental Action Committee.
I don't have an answer as far as what has been looked into. It was raised at the Environmental Action Committee, Madam Mayor, but any research or anything like that, I believe, would have fallen to staff from that discussion. I don't believe it happened at the EAAC from any of its membership.
Okay, I'll go to Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question / update for Director Dunlop. I mentioned this some time ago, and it's probably done, but I don't know if the investment was because it was residents that were asking me of Tempo. We talked a little bit about this. It's a railing over the culvert over their pond. It was a concern for safety for children playing in that area. I was just wondering if that's been completed or on the radar.
Through you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
The one railing was completed near the right off to Penser. There's an allotment of $5,000 in the program before you for the additional barrier for the head wall.
Okay,
thank
Deputy
you.
Mayor, good. Okay, I see Councillor Sullivan then, and then Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my question is regarding these charging stations. It's plural, so for $10,000, how many would there be? And I would assume that these are user pay. So will the charges that accompany these stations recoup the costs of them?
Director Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. The value of $10,000 for charging stations was one as part of a discussion at the EAAC. No research has been done at this point in time, so I am not sure what $10,000 will get us. I know there is a variety of charging stations available. The intent would be, it would be a per pay system in my mind, but that is something that we'll have to do our research and report back prior to the purchase or installation of such a unit.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Strachan? Your hand is still up.
Thank you.
With us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Dunlop, one question going back to County Road 43 works. You mentioned that there was a request from, so the intent that was coming from myself as well as other members of council for the change to the green space on in the median was to have a more environmentally friendly option rather than just being grass that needs to be mowed and so on. And so the way that you described it was that it was an upgraded green space, I guess. And so by upgraded, does that equate to more expensive? And if so, what are we talking about when we say it's more expensive?
Through you, Worship. The upgrade, I mean, in regards to, it's not a concrete space. It's not just a plain grassed area. As per the presentation provided in April, it is a tree every 10 meters wherever we possibly can. And it is a green covering of some sort. What that covering is, we're trying to make it environmentally friendly, low maintenance, but that has not been determined by the landscape architects as of yet. The roundabouts are United Counties of Leeds and Grenville responsibility, and will have some trees, etc., in the center, but only from a visual barrier standpoint, which is how a roundabout operates. And we'll look for adoption and beautification of those as a later component.
Okay, thank you, Director Dunlop. Thank you for clarifying.
And Director Dunlop, the reality is that while these funds are being allocated, they are likely to be spent in this year. We know that the bridge is coming first, most likely. I should not say that so categorically. We have some sense from the counties that that may be the first step at this juncture. So these funds being allocated are really being set aside. Is that my understanding?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, you're correct. Will the municipality spend $1.8 million on County Road 43? We're still looking for clarification from the county from a cash flow management standpoint. But you are correct. The intent has been provided to date is that we start with the bridge. So we will dedicate these funds because it is a 3-year, anticipated to be a 3-year project.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on Public Works right now, colleagues? I'm not seeing anything. I know I'm conscious of time, so maybe we'll get through Mr. Ogunrande's next couple of slides, and we should take a break if we're going to go long this evening so that we remain fresh and everybody gets a chance to stretch their legs. Mr. Ogunrande, would you like to move on?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the next slide is actually the Parks, Recreation and Culture Department. So I believe we can jump straight into that one as regards council's questions regarding the itemized projects.
Okay. I've asked the question about Riverside. So once again, I think Mr. Ogunrande, you've stated clearly that, again, the 750 allocation last year wasn't spent. Now we have an anticipated 1.5 million spent this year. That may in fact not be spent all in 2020 either, because it may stretch into 2023 is my understanding.
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct. So as I mentioned earlier, that the Riverside expansion project, it has been identified as a growth project. So this means that it's going to be funded mainly from the development charges. And the allocation that was in the last year's budget, since the project did not commence as we thought it would, the draw from the DC Reserve Fund was never made. So depending on what aspects of the project will be completed in 2022, that will determine how we go ahead and draw from the DC Reserve Fund.
Okay. One other thing, and then I'll recognize Councillor Barkley. I still see under other capital, Henry Street Beach, Birds Rapids. I believe Mr. Guy has received other direction. Perhaps it needs to be formalized at this meeting, but I believe there's a consensus to not pursue that particular project, but a half-court basketball rehabilitation. Mr. Guy?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that is correct. We have received confirmation that Birds Rapids would like to invest the money in the basketball court that sits behind the Birds Rapids Community Center. So that change will be made in that project description away from the Henry Street Beach.
I'll recognize Councillor Barkley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Guy. First item, Maplewood Hall rehabilitation. You clarified that part of that is $50,000 carried over, which was the original, I guess, estimate of the repair work that needed to be done on Maplewood Hall. Subsequently, you've indicated that there's more work that needs to be done on Maplewood Hall. Is this just an increase in the cost of the original estimate, or are there additional items besides the front walkway, which I know is a concern for many of the residents as a safety issue, and the front steps? Is there more than what was originally anticipated, or is it some sort of inflation?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Barclay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Barclay. Originally, the 50,000 was going to be the front walkway, and the back walkway, and that was through our insurance assessment that was done on all of our municipal buildings, and that work was recommended to be done. We were going to do some soffit and fascia work as well. This work includes all of that, but also includes the copula and the roof structure, along with, I believe, windows for the facility. So we've added some other items that needed to be done to the facility as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the idea of mobilizing a construction crew in there once should save the municipality some money. So that's how that project sort of came about.
Follow-up question, if I might.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Barclay.
Certainly that assessment of what needed to be done with Maplewood Hall, I understand once you have a crew there, you can do other important repairs to Maplewood Hall. And I'm sure the residents of Oxford Mills are very pleased to see a commitment to rehabilitate Maplewood Hall. I'd like to ask about the former Township Hall right beside it. It's another one of our heritage buildings. And I understand that in the operations budget, you are going to take a look, or ask someone to take a look at the engineering report that was done in 2012 regarding repairs that needed to be done to the Township Hall. What I'm looking for, and I don't see in this budget, is some sort of commitment of funds beyond taking a look at that 2012 engineering report. I know in the 10 years since that report was created that, you know, the Township Hall hasn't gotten any prettier or any more secure. So I'm wondering if using your rationale of having a construction crew at Maplewood Hall being more cost effective to add some additional items, whether we couldn't have some savings by looking at the roof in particular of the Township Hall, just to prevent any more further deterioration of what is a National Historic Site. And it's the only National Historic Site that we have in North Granville. I'm very concerned about the envelope of that building and protecting it for future use. So I'm wondering if the roof, I just had a glance at that 10-year-old engineering report, and the section that dealt with the roof had a total of $60,000 allocated. Now I understand that those are 10-year-old prices, but even if they were to increase 20%, we'd be looking at $75,000. So I don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul in the sense of taking money away from Maplewood Hall, but I'm wondering if we couldn't find somehow a commitment of at least $75,000 towards the Township Hall. And I'm not sure where you would find that, but even if it was a commitment to have a reserve fund created and transfer $75,000 into reserve fund for Township Hall, whether somehow we couldn't show some love to that very important heritage building in our community. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Guy.
Thanks for the comments, Councillor Barclay. I think the rationale was the fact that that report is 8 years old now. There was a recommendation, I believe, or a motion through the Heritage Committee to update that report and to look at the potential for an arts hub to be created within that space. So I think the idea of the update for the from that report is to have it updated with that in mind, and see what comes out of that. And then the other idea was that, you know, if we're going to mobilize and do some work on the township hall, we probably should look at the entire structure, and what's its end use going to be. So that's the idea behind sort of waiting for that report to be done, consulting with the community to strike a business plan, and then look to do the rehab based on sort of the use of the building or who's going to use the facility. So I think that, you know, that was the rationale behind staff wanting to wait for that particular building. Also from a resource point of view, and just from the amount of projects we had, we thought it was best if we could put that off in terms of just for 1 year, and it would give us more time to, as I mentioned, work with the community to come up with an end use for the building, and then do the repairs or restoration based on that.
Just to follow up, if I might, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, and then I'll add myself to the list. Go ahead, Councillor Barkley.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, but what the engineering report was really talking about was protecting the envelope. It was repointing the exterior, maybe dealing with some of the front portico that was falling down and still is falling down, and the roof. So what the future use, in my mind, would be strictly what happens inside the building. And you know, I think it's imperative that we at least create some sort of reserve over the next 3-4 years to build up enough capital, while at the same time we are studying about the feasibility of rehabilitating it for some public use. And I'm on the Heritage Advisory Committee, and they said including but not limited to an arts hub. So it would require certainly a lot of consultation with arts groups to see if that was feasible. But no matter how it's used in the future, I think we have to protect it from further deterioration. And it's something I know you and I have talked about for many years, well before I was on council, about that building in particular. And I know it was a concern of yours and previous senior management. So, you know, I really think we need to get moving. And we're coming up for election. I hate to bring politics into it, but you know, I don't want to potentially leave council without having something put away for that township hall. It would really speak to my credibility, I think. So I would urge you to consider putting some money aside this year and subsequent years to deal with that township hall, over and above spending some money to take a look at a 10-year-old engineering report, which I think, I may be wrong, but will simply update the estimates of what it would cost to fix the roof and repoint it and repair some of the exterior.
Okay, I also see Mr. Dyke's hand is up, and Mr. Dyke, I assume you may wish to add to this discussion. All I can say is I know that, you know, we have good news in terms of a repurposing of another valued building in our community, and that obviously was our own courthouse here in the heart of Kempfield, which over many decades served valuable purposes. And I think there's a worry on the part of council that if we don't act soon, and then that township hall may suffer a similar fate. And while I think we're very happy to see that the counties, and I was very much part of a very strong advocacy effort to see if in fact that building, that courthouse, could be repurposed to affordable housing, which is badly needed in our community. I certainly have a similar attachment to Township Hall in terms of making sure that the exterior is well preserved. And I think there are legitimate anxieties about where we are in 2022 and how much more life the exterior of that building has. Of course, it's been there for a long time, so we cross our fingers that all is well, but I think it's feeling a bit perilous on the part of council. Mr. Dyke, did you want to add at this stage?
Thank you, Worship. Just in a matter of process, to Councillor Barclay's original request, if the direction of council is to do one or two things, we can include it as a project this year that's yet undefined, or we can create to Mr. Orinday's original presentation on the reserves. If council directs us to create a reserve fund or reserve, excuse me, for this project, we can do either. We just would need that included in any approval with respect to the capital budget as we move forward today and on the 2nd.
Okay, I'm going to thank you for that. I think that's appreciated. I'm going to move to Councillor O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you very much. And I would like to echo Councillor Barclay's concerns about letting a historic building fall into disrepair. And I appreciate that this report was 10 years old or 8 years old, however old it is. But if money was spent on getting that report and they said that the roof needed to be repaired or replaced, and 8 years later it still hasn't been done, doing a new report, paying for a new inspection probably isn't going to change the result. So the recommendation will be it needs a new roof, probably needs more. But if we already know that, then I think, I think you have to maintain and take care of the assets that we have, or they're going to cost even more down the road. So to prevent any damage, further damage to the building, and to make it usable as an arts hub or even as a storage space for the arts, I think we need to, as Councillor Barclay said, protect the exterior of the building and don't let it fall apart like some other older buildings have. So I would definitely support trying to move forward with something, not just a Band-Aid. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dyke?
Yeah, I just for a point of clarity, I think in speaking with Mr. Guy and his team on it is that we aren't ignoring the building, and by no means are we letting it fall down. We are just prioritizing based on the information we have on Maplewood Hall versus Oxford Mills Old Town Hall. We've taken note of what council has said, and with council's direction, we will create either a project or a reserve to recognize that project going forward, and put it into the budget moving forward. But I think it's important to note that we do monitor our buildings, and to the point where it's not unsafe. Nor are we letting it fall down. But I do appreciate the information of council on that. We do need to protect our historical assets, and we'll do it. We'll move towards achieving what council's direction is on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guy, do you have anything to add? And then I'm going to ask council for any other questions on other parts of this Parks and Go ahead.
Just to add, I don't discount the importance of that facility, and certainly, as Councillor Barclay alluded to, we've had many talks over the years, and it's certainly a very important building. I'd like to see it fixed up. It is definitely, we made the decision based on our priority list and the number of projects to put it off for 1 year before we put significant dollars into it, and we do monitor the building. And I guess to Councillor O'Sullivan's comment about band-aiding, and I guess that's maybe where the concern is from staff's end, is that, we want to do this right, and we don't want to go in and just band-aid somewhere and then still have to do a whole bunch of work on it the following year or the following year after that. I think the idea would be to create a business plan, an end use, and then fix the building up properly. But certainly it has to happen sooner rather than later, and I'm in full agreement with that.
We appreciate that, Mr. Guy. Again, I think the courthouse in Kempfield tells a certain tale. And I think everyone who's spoken this evening has a shared commitment to not letting that happen to the township hall. And I think there is significant appetite to see forward movement, especially in this term of council for obvious reasons. We want you to have the capacity to move quickly. And we want the council, we want the community to understand that we all value heritage, and it's important that we preserve one of our remaining buildings. And I think the only National Historic Site, if I'm correct, someone can correct me on that, in the municipality. We've lost a lot of our buildings, and they were never, in many instances, municipal buildings. Some of them were, of course, but it's probably time to shift our perspective on this one. So thank you. I'm confident that between you and Mr. Dyke, you can come back with a strategy that will give council some comfort. If I can just ask a question, I see the MUP proposed for Riverside Park. It says contingent on grant, so I don't know if the 121,000 is actually proposed money from a grant or would leverage an existing grant. Can you explain, please?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, right now that is, we've added that to the budget as a list of capital projects, but it is contingent on a grant. Right now we have a grant, an application out specific to that project. I believe our share of the 121 is roughly 20,000. And it is contingent on, if we receive the money, we will go ahead and plan the project. If we don't receive the money, then it will be taken off the list for 2022.
So just curious, why do we capture it as a $120,000 commitment if our share would just be 20,000?
I
believe that's
if I might, Your Worship. So
sure.
on projects like that, we identify full value project with funding sources. As similar earlier project, you heard Mr. Ogrande talk about projects that would be a portion DC eligible. Same piece, this one is saying being DC eligible. It's actually going to be third-party grant eligible, and so it's full project value. Funding source would be 20,000 municipality, balance the third-party grant. It's a reporting mechanism.
Okay, just given the discussion we just had about identifying some additional resources for other projects, I'm assuming that the Riverside Park MUP would only proceed if the $100,000 was received. Is that correct, Mr. Guy?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if there's some margin to maneuver in other parts of the budget that might allow for the creation of a reserve when we talk about the facility in Oxford Mills, the township hall.
Your Worship, we'll that's what part of our review when we leave tonight's meeting with the directions from council, okay. And we report back on the 2nd. That will be part of the what we bring back to council.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, colleagues? Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, and through you to Director Guy. I don't see any line item for the BMX park upgrade or pump track. Is that still something that's going to be in this budget?
Mr. Guy?
Through you, Your Worship, that's included in the operational parks maintenance budget, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And of course, just to be clear, to the community, there has been an offer of significant in-kind support that would offset quite significantly the rehabilitation or its improvements to the BMX park. So I think the estimated cost, Mr. Guy, in your operating is fairly modest at this stage. Is that right?
Yes, you are correct, Your Worship. It's very modest.
Okay.
I think it's around $5,000.
Okay. I see Deputy Mayor, so we'll complete a round on this Parks, Rec and Culture. We'll try to get all of Council's questions answered, and then we'll take a quick break. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I think most of my questions have been answered so far. One question I have is, I see the Senate of Rehab has popped up. What exactly is going to be done in that work, and has there been any negotiations with the owner of the building currently? I think the public would probably be interested in knowing, will it continue in that spot for now, or is there plans for moving the cenotaph because of the new owner of the school, that kind of thing? I just wondering if we can get a little update there. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr.
Through you, Your Worship. From my understanding, Councillor McManaman, or Deputy Mayor McManaman, excuse me, the municipality has an easement for the cenotaph. I have not had discussions with the owner regarding the work that we want to do there. I've been working with the Legion on this project to create a new walkway that leads to the cenotaph, an apron around the cenotaph, as well as some signage that the Legion and in particular Roy Brown has been working on. So that is, we've committed, the municipality's committed $10,000, and the Legion have committed to raising some funds as well for the project. So that is where the $10,000 has come from. But as far as the owner of the property, I have not had any discussions with him regarding this.
Okay. Mr. Dyke?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just to add to Mr. Guy's comments. Yeah, so there is an easement for the cenotaph. So with the current owner, any subsequent owner, any development proposal has to honor that easement. And any negotiations regarding relocation, that would have to come through council for anything to be done, or preservation's current spot. So that's protected in the site, no standing who owns the building or who it's transferred to.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Guy, could you just speak quickly to fleet other in parks? It's 150,000. I know we just had an earlier conversation about leasing vehicles.
We've got,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, Your Worship. We have three main items. We have a wide area mower that we're purchasing at an estimated value of 120,000. That's a growth related item due to the fact that we now have campus operations and grass cutting services that we're providing there. We've got 10,000 in the budget for a float trailer to add to our complement. Right now we have one trailer that floats our lawn mowing equipment. Now we'll have two, which will provide more efficiencies within the Parks Department. And we have another zero turn mower, replacement mower for an estimated cost of $20,000.
Okay, thank you. The other thing that I don't see reflected here, and not to bring it all back to tempo, but there has been some long-standing negotiations about the acquisition of some land near their neighborhood to accommodate a community park. I know, and I have been part of multiple conversations where I think I've been assured, and Deputy Mayor McManaman and Doreen O'Sullivan and others have been assured there will be movement. I believe that will come at no cost to the municipality in terms of the acquisition of that land. Can you confirm that, just so we feel confident there will be forward momentum on that very strong desire on the part of Tempo residents to see a small community park, or neighborhood park, I should say?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is my understanding that we're working with the developer and there won't be any costs for the purchase of the land. In looking at our long-range capital budgeting, I think right now the Parks and Recreation Department has earmarked 2024 to get started on a construction of a park in Tempo.
And not 2023?
I'm pretty sure it's in 2024. I can double check that, but I'm pretty sure we've got it earmarked in 2024.
Okay, we can follow up with
just
you.
Looking at our in developing our long range budgets, that's where we had it based on other projects and that we felt we had to get completed.
Okay, not really germane to this budget discussion. not that consequential, I should say, other than understanding that it's a commitment on the part of Parks and Rec. Okay, council colleagues, anything else in terms of this one? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So it's 8:17. We've been going for over 2 hours. I suggest we take 10 minutes and we'll resume. Thank you. Okay, I'll ask that council colleagues, if they're back, if you could please turn on your cameras so that we can carry on. Okay, I think we have everyone back, which is great. So I think Mr. Ogamrende, I think we'll go to you to continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, next slide, please. So on this slide, we have the list of the other smaller capital projects across the different departments in the municipality. We can definitely take questions on the specifics of this project, if there are any at this time.
Colleagues, any questions on what you see here? Councillor Barkley, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This relates to the economic development budget, specifically the service club signs. I'm wondering whether that allocation of $24,000 is net of any revenue we might receive from those service clubs to display their signs, or some of the business groups. I know it's typical for these kind of signs that sections or I don't know, banners or whatever are charged an amount. And I believe from notes that I have that there'll be 4 of them, 2 on 43 and 2 on 44. So I'm just looking for a little bit more detail and some explanation about how those will be funded, whether it's 100% coming from the municipality or whether there's an opportunity to generate some revenue for actually charging people for the space on the sign. And I'll have a follow-up after that. Thank you.
Mr. Dyke, who would like to take that?
Mr. Gilmer here, Your Worship.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Gilmer. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So yes, Councillor Barkley, thank you for the question. And I can confirm that we will be looking at charging each individual service club to have an individual plaque as part of those signs. Taking into consideration that with COVID, some of these service clubs have been hit pretty hard, like everyone else. So we'll definitely look at charging a reasonable fare, reasonable rate to these service clubs. And yes, I can also confirm that we are looking at having 4 signs. So previously we only had the 2, but it was recommended through our sign strategy back in 2010 that we actually install 4, so that we cover each entrance into the municipality, or into Kempfield, I should say.
Thank you. And a follow-up regarding signs, if I might.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, to you, Mr. Gilmer, I guess. As you know, the BIA was able to create 2 large signs directing people to downtown Kempfield a number of years ago. They're looking a little faded and worn, and I think they're still useful, but they're not attracting much attention. I'm wondering if you could speak to the BIA about using those 2 signs maybe to promote some of our Explore North Granville or some of our tourism messages to people driving east or west on 43. I don't know if they're in jeopardy where they are, certainly not the one that is viewable eastbound, but possibly the westbound large sign. And I think they're 16 feet by 8 feet or larger. Possibly the westbound sign is in jeopardy because of the eventual widening of 43. But I think it would be great to reach out to the BIA who funded those signs to see if they might be brightened up or used to another purpose. It's just a suggestion. It doesn't have to, I don't know if it's a budget item or not.
Mr. Gilmer, do you have any other comments?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Barkley, we can certainly discuss that with the BIA and look at options to maybe brighten those signs up or repurpose them.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question on the council chambers rehab, which is 170,000, and obviously is distinct from the previous slide where there was mention of the municipal reception area also being renovated. Of course, as all staff know, we did receive a sizable grant from, I think, the provincial or federal infrastructure fund to support a very significant overhaul of the main floor of the municipal center to repurpose it into a reception area. So I just want the community to be clear and ourselves to be clear. That project is currently underway, and now there's a proposed rehabilitation to council chambers. So Mr. Dyke or perhaps Mr. Guy, can you just speak to what that entails? Thank you.
Ms. Babcock-Cormier can speak to that project, Your Worship.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's with respect to updating the technology in the council chambers in order to facilitate the holding of hybrid meetings. Currently, the technology that's there doesn't easily support that format. And so the IT technology needs to be updated in order to be able to meet that procedural requirement in the bylaw.
Are you confident, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, that the 170,000 is sufficient? I would assume so. If it's an audiovisual upgrade, is that mostly what we're looking at, or are there other elements to that project?
It includes the projector as well as the AV equipment, and I'm reasonably satisfied that that amount, although it hasn't been put out to tender yet, should be sufficient for the purposes. Additionally, the municipality is receiving some grant funding with respect to that matter.
To the council chambers rehabilitation, as well as the municipal reception / lobby area.
Correct, Your Worship.
Okay, great, thanks. Council colleagues? Anything else on this slide? Okay. If not, I think we're moving on to water wastewater. Is that the next presentation, Mr. Dyke?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And I think you're going to introduce that for us this evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much. I just wanted to give a quick introduction to this part of the presentation, because it's important for the municipality, to the members of the public to realize that the water wastewater budget, as Femi noted earlier, it's what we call a standalone or self-funded budget. So it only affects the users of the system. We're prohibited by legislation to use tax dollars to offset or cover any operations, projects, capital or operational in the water wastewater budget. It's purely paid for by the user rates previously set by council going forward. And it's paid for by the users of the system. So I think that's an important distinction from both the capital operating budget we just went through and the operating budget we're going to talk about next week, is that this one is solely a consumption-based budget for the users of the system. So which basically covers the urban area of the municipality, not the rural area of the municipality.
So if you're in your own septic and your own well, you were in no way implicated by this budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And perhaps I'll remind council colleagues that I think just under 2 years ago, I know Ms. Dunlop was quite involved. Council took a hard look at water rates, the user fees for water and sewer, and we did reset those rates so that the base rate was lower and that people were charged more for their consumption than for their access to the system. And those rates were set, as I understand it, for 5 years. So I think the municipality is operating with those assumptions in place. That's correct, Mr. Dyke. Okay. All right. So then over to Mr. Ogunrande for the next part.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're talking now about the water wastewater budget for 2022 as recommended by staff. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So as with any operation, the budget that we're presenting forward tonight to council is being impacted as well by these different areas. So existing levels of service and the impact of growth on the water wastewater budget, pressures on the municipal resources, as well as the considerations from the asset management plan, the maintenance of reserves, inflation as well is playing a part in what we're presenting tonight to council, and as well as increased capital costs. With the capital budget that we just went through as well, the water wastewater budget was presented through different engagement sessions to the BIA and the Chamber of Commerce, the media, and 2 public sessions. One of the questions or recommendations that came out from those sessions was for staff to make a distinct clarity on the separation of the water wastewater budget from the main municipal budget. COVID as well has had its impact on the water wastewater department. And as part of this budget presentation, council will also be seeing staff recommended investment in infrastructure as well. Next slide, please. So just as Mr. Dyke had mentioned, the water and wastewater budget is a separate and whole budget from the municipal budget. So the water and wastewater budget has its own operating and capital budget as part of the full departmental budget. All expenses that are contained in the operating and the capital budget for the water and wastewater department are funded directly from the user rates that are collected on the water and sewer services offered. And also, as Mr. Dyke mentioned, that this affects only the urban side of North Grenville and not the rural areas. The water and wastewater budget and operations are set up to be self-sustaining and to not rely on the tax base for funding. So what this means is that the water and wastewater department has its own reserves, which are separate from all the other reserve and reserve funds within the municipality. Next slide, please. So we can see that the rates that were used to create this budget are based solely on the rate study for the department, which was approved by council in 2020. And this study prescribes that the 2022 rate that's presented in this budget be exactly what it was in 2021. So this means that there will be no rate increase as part of the 2022 budget being presented tonight. So we can also see that the cost of an average household that's plugged into the municipal water and wastewater services is based mainly on the consumption, which differs from household to household. And as a result, we're seeing a very slight increase in the total water and wastewater operating budget year over year from 2021 to 2022. The 1.1% that's been identified is as a result of growth. And on the next slide, we'll see the different categorizations of expenses. Actually, the salaries and benefits for 2022 is at 1.4 million. Materials and supplies, just over 300,000. Contracted property services at just over 800,000. Contracted professional services at 148,000. Reports and studies at 197,000. Other costs at 61,000. The debt servicing costs at 738, and the direct transfer to capital reserves at 876,000. So this is a total expense of 4.5 million for the 2022 budget year, which will be fully funded by the user fees of 4.5 million for the 2022 budget year. And as I mentioned, the different categories of expenses that I went through, the biggest being the salary and benefits for the water wastewater department, as well as the transfer to capital and reserve at 19.1%, the debt servicing interest and fee charges at 16.1%, other costs and reports and studies at 1.3 and 4.3% respectively. The contracted professional and property services at 3.2% and 17.9% also respectively. And we have materials and supplies at 7.2%, all making up the 100% of the costs on the operating side of the water and the wastewater department for 2022. And as I mentioned as well, that this will all be funded fully by the user fees on the right-hand side of this slide that will be collected in 2022. So I can actually take a pause here to see if we have any questions on the operating budget for water and wastewater.
Yep, and I see Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you very much, and through you to Mr. Ogunrindi. I will get it, I promise. Can you just tell me why there's a 12.8% increase in staff and benefits salaries? Was there extra staff hired? Does that represent that increase of 12.8%?
I believe Deputy Director Finley would have more details on that particular line, but I believe also that as part of this budget, there's a new position that's been brought forward as well.
So we could go to Mr. Finley. He's on the call. Mr. Finley? Oh, Mr. Finley, you are muted. You have to restart.
Apologize for that.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To your question, Councillor O'Sullivan, yes, we are proposing some additional staff, as well as reconciling what some staff do within the municipality that relates to the water and wastewater division. So we looked at some existing staff works and allocated a portion of their staff, portion of their salary towards the division based on their engineering functions, as well as we are looking at a lead water wastewater operator position that also provided some of that increase.
Thank you.
Mr. Finley, go ahead, Councillor Sullivan. I apologize.
No, thank you. Finished.
Okay. Mr. Finley, I understand that within water wastewater, it's actually extremely lean. I think that is my understanding. Do you just want to give council and the community the benefit of why that additional position is so valuable?
For sure, Madam Mayor. So our water and wastewater division is comprised of 10 staff at the moment. We are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there is rotation shifting for our staff, and that's to run the entire water and wastewater collection systems, as well as their distribution system and the treatment capacities. As we grow, the need to have that higher level staff to be able to maintain these items, as well as direct supervise some of the other staff is becoming more critical to make sure we complete all of our legislative requirements, make sure the water is safe to drink, and as well being treated properly before being discharged to the Rideau River.
And I assume the addition of this position will help to respond to the expanded wastewater facility.
That's correct. They will also play a critical role in the development of that our expansion as well.
Okay, I'll recognize Councillor Barkley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this might go to Deputy Director Finley as well, unless somebody else wants to jump in. My question regards the increased consumption. In fact, was there increased consumption due to people working from home and not commuting, basically? And would I guess, since we're billing now strictly on consumption rather than a block rate for the first, I guess it was 300 cubic meters or something, Can you give me some idea of what kind of increase we saw, if any, over last year due to COVID? I'm assuming it's due to COVID.
Mr. Finley, can you respond to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Barkley, we actually didn't see a large increase in the average residential consumer. In our 2020 predictions, so this would have been pre-COVID, we estimate the average residential home used about 12 cubic meters of water per month. What we noticed through 2021 last year is the average residential home used 12.3 cubic meters per month. So there was a slight increase based on our earlier predictions, but not a significant increase with people staying at home.
Okay, curious. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, council colleagues, on this budget? So obviously this is in terms of the actual wastewater expansion. There is a significant appetite in the community, and I know outgoing Deputy Mayor, and I have heard it multiple times when it comes to the pressures on development, both small and large. So I think for the most part, it's a relief to see that the municipality is well positioned to proceed, and I feel reassured that council has locked in very stable water and wastewater user fees for the coming years. So there will be no unpredictability when it comes to what people pay. But certainly we do know that if you are on the municipal water and wastewater system, you will see an expanded service in the coming years. Mr. Garande, was there anything else on this slide that you were planning to present this evening?
No, we'll just move into the capital budget next for the water and wastewater department.
Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so as part of the 2022 draft water and wastewater capital cost and funding, the main project that staff is bringing forward this evening is the water pollution control plant. I'd like to highlight that this is an expansion project that will require major investment in multiple years. I'll also like to highlight that this is also a growth project that will be funded majorly through future DCs. Staff will be bringing more detail forward as we go into the year as to how exactly the specifics of this project will work going forward. So for the water wastewater department, we're looking at an investment in existing infrastructure rehabilitation to the tune of 1.9 million in conjunction with the water pollution control plant at 8 million and other capital projects at just over 108,000. This is a total investment of just over 10 million for 2022 to be funded from reserves of the water wastewater department at 8.2 million, other revenue at 1.3, development charges at just over 400,000 and grants at 58,400. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving into the actual detailed listing of the capital projects for 2022, we'll be happy to answer any questions regarding this listing of projects.
Colleagues? So you can see some existing infrastructure rehab here that I think will support some of perhaps Council Barkley's drainage preoccupations when it comes to how water flows. Anything here that you want to flag? Now's your time. Okay. I'm not really seeing anything. I just have a quick question. The County Road 43 carryover project, it's 338. It says includes bridge crossing. Can someone elaborate on that for me, please?
That will be Deputy Director Finley.
Okay, Mr. Finley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Correct. So that that was some funding that we'd put aside for the County Road 43 expansion, which included sanitary force main crossing the bridge. So that's where the including bridge crossing. It also runs down County Road 43 towards the pump station near Ryan's Well Drive in County Road 19. So those are funds as well as just above that County Road 43 piping was the water network upgrades in that area. Anticipating some of the construction was going to begin last year. Obviously that didn't take place. So we've put that money, carried that money further into this year, as well as you'll see there's an additional 100,000 to make up for what we feel the works will hopefully anticipate along the bridge this year.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Barclay.
Yeah, this is not a question, it's just a comment that we'll probably see allocations towards drainage in the operating budget because it's primarily third-party consultants that we'll be employing to and a new staff member to update our assessments so that any kind of repairs can be billed to the appropriate landowner should it be required.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Finley, while we have you, Bridge Street overflow construction, can you speak to that?
Not a problem, Madam Mayor. So the Bridge Street overflow construction is a preventative piece of infrastructure that we've been investigating, and it's if there was catastrophic failure at our Bridge Street sanitary pump station, which is what collects, excuse me, most of the wastes of the original part of the service area of Kempfield. Due to climate change, more severe weather events, we wanted to have an event that, or some infrastructure in place so that if we had catastrophic failure there, we'd be able to react in time and not have sanitary backup in the people's houses that are in the area. So this is basically a large container that will give us reaction time in the event. We've done a lot of upgrades to the station, new pumps, new PLCs, things like that to help any failures, but there's always that off chance, hit by lightning, things like that we could lose the station. And of course, then nothing will pump back up to our water pollution control plant. So this will give us 700 cubic meters of storage and the ability to get crews to arrive to site to either try and pump out that overflow box or if need be, have it discharged to the Kempfield Creek if worst case scenario happens, rather than building up into people's homes.
Okay, appreciate that explanation. And a reference obviously to climate change, for better or for worse. It's obviously impacting the kind of infrastructure planning you and others are having to do for the future, for decades into the future. So thanks. I'll go to Councillor Barclay and Councillor Sullivan.
I apologize. I should have taken my hand down.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and through you to Deputy Mr. Finley. Water main looping and dead end flushing, projected cost of $100,000. I don't know how many dead ends we have in the system. I know there was one on Wellington Road, which has been taken care of this year now. So as they are done, does that reduce those projected costs of dead end flushing and any looping once they're all looped? Or how many more do we have to take care of like this?
So through you, Madam Mayor, if I can respond.
Yes, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, I was on mute, go ahead. Go ahead.
So our last count, we had about 18 dead ends. So these are sections of water main that dead end. And part of what can happen is whether not that you lose a bit of quality control, but we want to increase our quality control by flushing any sediments that get built up in the mains. Of course, water main looping also removes that stagnant water. It keeps the water flowing and recharged. So we'll look at various ends. This was kind of a general box to see what we will prioritize that list and see what items we can loop, as well as if we can't loop it, we'll put a flushing station at the end of it. We've done that a few times now. So at least we can recharge that line and make sure that we do provide high quality water to the residents. And so as we get them done, we'll slowly bring that down.
Okay, thank you. So I didn't realize there were that many dead ends, and I didn't understand the significance of the dead end or looping. So I guess that's a bonus of being a counselor, as I've learned all this technology stuff. So thank you for that answer. Appreciate it. I do have one more question. I think that it was brought to your attention, I guess, and I noticed it because I was kayaking under the bridge on Prescott Street, and I saw some pipes that looked like they needed attention. So I think you told me then that that would be a future repair that would need to be done, but they were okay at that point in time. So I just wonder, is that in this budget, or is it going to be in the next budget, or where does that fall in here?
So through you, Madam Mayor, correct. There was some insulation that had fallen out of the water main along the Prescott Street Bridge. It is in our 2023 program to upgrade that line, budget pending, of course. So that's at the time, that's what we're looking at the moment, 2023. Of course, we will reevaluate during that budget deliberations.
Okay, so there's no risk of that freezing and causing a big problem?
No, for the amount of insulation that was missing there and the movement of water, that it's getting busier all the time. With water constantly moving, we didn't see a risk at this moment, just that small little section. So we've about this point put it for 2023.
Okay, so it is, it's on the radar.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, colleagues. Anything else here? I think this has actually been a very helpful discussion, certainly, for council to understand some of the strategic investments apart from the major expansion. So appreciate your work, Mr. Finley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So Mr. Rende, where are we now in our budget presentation?
So I believe that concludes the presentation for the Water Wastewater Department operating and capital budget, as well as the draft 2022 capital budget for the municipality.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Dyke, and then I'm going to ask for a final round of comments from council colleagues and myself. Thank you. Mr. Dyke?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just from a process standpoint, as we mentioned before, as the water wastewater budget is standalone and separate from any impacts on the municipal tax rate or the operating budget, council is in the position now, if they so desire, they actually can make a decision on the water wastewater budget on its own, while referring the capital budget to next Tuesday to be dealt with in hand with the operating budget.
Indeed. So just to be clear, Mr. Dyke, we've just received this presentation this evening. We can move the capital budget in part or in whole as part of next week's deliberations. There is no imperative to move it this evening. Is that correct?
Just for clarity, Your Worship, I wasn't mentioning the capital budget. I was speaking the water wastewater budget as it's separate from the operating budget, has no impact on the operating budget. If council was comfortable with what was presented tonight, they actually can approve that budget tonight, or they can just move it on to the second and approve it with the package of the other budget. I believe I'm thinking from the interest of time and the amount of deliberation I'm anticipating for the operating budget, it would just create an efficiency of time, but it has no impact on staff. It was an option for council to consider.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So I have Councillor Barkley and Councillor O'Sullivan, and then I'll put myself on the list. So Councillor Sullivan, please.
I think Councillor Barkley.
No, I'd be willing to move the adoption of the water and wastewater budget if you want to deal with that now. Just following Mr. Dyke's suggestion, I think it won't impact our capital budget, and it's standalone, and there weren't many questions, so I think I'd be prepared to move acceptance.
So Councillor Barkley, are you moving that? That's
yes. Sorry.
Appetite of council to consider a motion, then I'll accept a motion. I have a mover. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan. And again, this is specific to the water and wastewater budget, and it is inclusive of operating and capital, is my understanding, that we are adopting both operating and capital this evening. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So council colleagues, Any further questions, thoughts? We have a motion on the floor. I will call the vote unless I see any other comments. Deputy Mayor, no? Okay. So then I will call the question. All in favor of water and wastewater adoption? Good. Thank you. That has been passed. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, I feel like you're trying to talk, but you're not. So I'll let that go unless your hand is up. All right. So council colleagues, I'll entertain any last comments on the budget. Of course, this has been a fulsome deliberation on capital. Perhaps I'll say that given that I've benefited from a previous presentation on capital and operating, I'm aware, and we know that obviously there was a technical briefing with the media. There is a proposed 1.9% tax rate increase. We've had no opportunity to talk together about an operating budget or any of the implications of our discussion this evening. I certainly do have an appetite to potentially see whether or not we could drop that proposed tax rate increase very modestly, and would look to any council comments in favor or against that suggestion. Certainly, I know this council has worked incredibly hard to keep our tax rate increases well below 2%, while also strategically investing in the community. So it's always a balance. And I certainly don't think we're in any position to make that decision tonight. But I know, given a very strong record of 1.5% in 2019, 1% in 2020, 0% in 2021, it may be prudent of us to look at whether or not staff might have any recommendations about how to drop it ever so slightly, and we could make that decision next week. I see Councillor Barclay and Councillor Strachian, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Dyke. Does staff require a formal direction in terms of allocating an additional $75,000 to reserves regarding the township hall?
That would, if I'm through your worship, Councillor Barkley, that would be part of the deliberation for the final approval of the capital budget next week on the 2nd. Okay, and would you be also waiting till next week to get some direction as far as the impact on the property tax rate? Madam Mayor just raised that issue. Either way works. If it's the direction of council, they want us to look at the options or the alternatives of bringing in a rate lower than the staff recommended rate that was presented publicly. We can commence at work now and have options prepared for council in time for the meeting on the 2nd. Okay, well, I still have the floor since the mayor raised it. I'd be looking, and I'll leave it up to staff really. We have yet to raise property taxes greater than 1.5, but I think given inflation, there's some pressures to go beyond that. But certainly I would ask staff to take a look and see if they can't lower the proposed property tax from 1.9 to something less. And I'm not going to land on a figure because there's a lot of moving pieces in both budgets. Okay. We will take that as direction to come back, and we'll work numbers anywhere from 1.5 to 2 or 1.9.
Yep.
Sure. Yep.
Well, let's hear from the rest of council. Certainly Councillor Strachian and then Councillor O'Sullivan.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. Both Madam Mayor and Councillor Barclay, I think, have been very careful in not stating any significant increase. I have certainly thought about the 1.9 and where that stands and what that could mean for certain people in our community, and certainly coming out of COVID and the different impacts that it has had economically, financially on various folks within our community. And a modest decrease, or however it's being couched by the previous speakers on this, I think that if you could overreach perhaps to say that we have more options than maybe we would want to consider, and then see what lands on on a must-have list versus from a council perspective, obviously, So, I think that presenting us with perhaps more options than would be reasonable, I think would give us an opportunity to also look at where ones fall within priorities, because council certainly can see things slightly differently from staff. And I think that would be it would be good to be able to have that further discussion. Should the items only fall to a certain percentage and there is no other wiggle room, then that's fine. But I think in this case, slightly more than perhaps the 1.5 or 1.6 that's been mentioned by the mayor, I think would be good to have as options in front of us next week, perhaps for another longer discussion about the budget. But I would like to be able to weigh some options. Thank you.
Councillor O'Sullivan, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank the director of, or the acting treasurer and Deputy Director Finley for the presentations this evening. I'm of two minds about the tax increase. What was presented in the overall package represents a 1.9% represents approximately $7 per month on a house that's assessed at $400,000. So I think that is reasonable. If we can get it below that, then yes, but I think that would be good. But if it's a case of pay me now or pay me later, I think we don't want to cut services, but I think it would be reasonable if we need to stick to the 1.9% and get the, maybe squeeze the extra 75,000 for the roof replacement in the Old Town Hall in Oxford Mills. But yes, I'm a taxpayer too, and I would like to keep it, and my family lives here and they're taxpayers as well. So I'd like to keep it as low as we can, but not at the expense of getting caught with a bigger increase down the road. So I want to have a good look at the operating budget first and all the options before I make my decision. But anyway, I think we have to be realistic about the costs and make sure that things are appropriately managed financially. So anyway, I want to thank all the senior management staff who've put this together and careful deliberations. And now it's our turn to deliberate more about what you've presented with us tonight. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor, outgoing Deputy Mayor for the next 12 hours, maybe less.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's part of my point will be that first off, this is my last meeting, so I won't be voting on the budget, but I will give you my 2 cents. First off, yes, the taxpayers are going to be concerned. There are some family budgets are going to be very, very tight. So between our CEO and our acting director of finance, one of the questions will be a little more. I'd like to look a little more long term. You guys know that right from the get go. I wanted 4-year budgets. This year, I was going through COVID. The province was handing out lots of money. You guys know we landed some decent amount of money funding from the province to help us out in various areas. I suspect that's going to dry up, and next year we may be looking at a very serious budget time. You guys will be. Sorry, I won't use me, but you'll be looking at some serious numbers, especially if you councillors are still in place for next year. I think it's going to be a lot more challenging. So I'm just wondering how much thinking our departments have done, thinking ahead in 2023, 2024, what that's going to look like, and just weigh that against what we're thinking of doing this year. I think council should be aware as well, and the public, of course, should be thinking about it or concerned that there's going to be some challenges next year, either way. So just your comments, I guess, is what I'm looking for. If you want to help me out,
Mr. Dyke.
Thank you, Your Worship. See you to Deputy Mayor McMahon. Yeah, so part of the presentation you'll receive next week, and as one is presented to the public, they'll show projections out beyond 2022 So you're not being asked to approve. They're showing projections as best we can show as impacts going on 22, as we are looking for things, impacts on revenues, impacts, and somebody's going to speak to impacts on inflation, which is that, you know, historic highs for people of a certain age, you know, at 4 and 5% this year, and the impacts that's having on our operating budget and things we'll look at. And so as we bring back options for Councillor Strachan's comment as the options that are available and what the impacts of those options are. So we won't just bring back a new number and say, okay, we pulled 100,000 out of the budget. We'll actually show you what that impact of removing that money will have on the budget, on the service level, if any, going forward. So that is all part of the trending downward, because some of the things we may remove this year, we're going to try to find things that just don't have to be put back in the budget next year. So it's a sustainable saving. So that's what we'll continue to do going into next week and beyond.
Okay. Well, Mr. Dyke, I think you've benefited from some conversation this evening. My understanding is to move it from 1.9 to 1.6 is approximately $40,000. In terms of municipal impacts, I think we're all conscious that households are also experiencing significant inflationary pressures. So it's always a balance between what we need to do as a municipality, and I think the rest of council has been a strong proponent of strategic and wise investments, and Deputy Mayor has certainly been part of that conversation, but I'm equally aware of the daily impacts of many different pressures on our residents. So it's always that balance, and I'm extremely confident in you, Mr. Dyke, and the rest of our staff to give us some options that don't radically change this budget. I think that's not what we're looking for, but we are looking potentially for a couple of options. I think that's it. I think it's been great work on the part of your team, extremely well considered. It's been unprecedented times with a pandemic, no less. So lots and lots of variables here to consider as we look to pass this 2022 budget. So I think more discussion to come. Council colleagues, we do have some other business this evening, including reporting out of closed, but I believe there's a motion to receive the budget information as it was presented this evening. Ms. Babcock-Cormier, it's getting late. Perhaps you can refresh me on procedurally what's our step to conclude tonight's budget discussions.
We have two items. One is for council to receive the presentation entitled Reserves for information purposes.
Okay, so I'll look for a mover or seconder for the receipt of the reserve discussion. Councillor Barkley, and I'll look for a seconder, please. Councillor Sullivan, thank you. And I'll ask for a vote on that. I expect we don't have any further discussion. All in favor, please. Good. Okay. And secondly,
that council defer the further consideration of the draft 2022 municipal capital budget to March 2nd, 2022.
Okay. You've heard the motion, colleagues. Mover and seconder, please. Okay, Councillor Barkley, Councillor Strachan, thank you. And I'm going to call the question on that one. All in favor, please. Good, thanks. Okay. So with that, I think I'm just calling up my agenda. I apologize. I think we're looking at reporting out of our closed session. We have no other items on the agenda this evening. Is that correct, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, from what I see here?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay. Other business appointment to fill the council vacancy. And I believe that we will be looking for a mover and a seconder for a motion, correct? Okay, and have you drafted that motion, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, or can I craft it, or do you have one crafted?
Whichever you would prefer, Your Worship. I do have something here, but if you'd like to go ahead.
No, you go ahead if you've crafted the motion already.
Okay, so it's be it resolved that council appoint Deborah Wilson as a council member for the balance of the 2018 to 2022 council term to fill the vacancy resulting from the resignation of Deputy Mayor Jim McManaman.
Thank you. So a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Barkley and O'Sullivan, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. I will say, of course, that we want to thank all of the candidates who interviewed with us last Friday. We have an abundance of talent in this community. It was a real pleasure to hear from 9 highly motivated individuals who are huge believers in making North Grenville a better place to be. It wasn't an easy decision, and I think we're really honored as a council to see that so many people step forward in earnest with, I think, really great intentions to be part of this team. And while there were 9 fabulous candidates, there was only one, obviously one spot, and it's our pleasure, Ms. Deb Wilson, once I call the vote, to welcome you. So, council colleagues, if there's nothing further, I will call the vote. All in favor, please. Good. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, very much. And once again, thank you to all those who stepped up last week. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, just a question or maybe a comment of this particular process that we went through. I don't know if you want to elaborate on it, but I think the public might be interested. I'm sure we have it documented, but I think publicly we can talk a little bit about it. You know, I did have, as my other council colleagues had, we had kind of a top 3 choices out of the 10 candidates, I believe. And but I wanted to say that the interview process went extremely well on the Friday, and it was a long day, but I thought it was going to be a draining day, and it actually wasn't. It was very energizing listening to all these candidates, what they talked about. And, you know, I started all this, of course, so it was interesting to me to see who would be stepping up and what their thoughts and ideas were, and just how closely they were following what was happening in North Grenville and their thoughts. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if we want to expand on it at all, but I just wanted to say that since this is my parting council meeting.
Indeed. Well, maybe we can just remind anyone who's just tuning in for the first time that immediately subsequent to your announcement, we did invite any member or property owner in North Grenville to express their interest in filling the vacancy. And over the course of almost 9 days, 9 candidates came forward. 9 came forward in the timeline with the deadline stipulated being last Thursday at 12 p.m. Noon. And once we determined who the 9 were, we scheduled interviews the following day. Everyone was interviewed by Zoom, and those interviews remain, I believe, on our website. I'll go to Councillor Barkley and Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to echo the comments by the outgoing Deputy Mayor, Jim, that it was, you know, it was a very long day. We had 9 applicants. And like him, I was very energized by the end of the day. It wasn't tiring at all because it was an incredible roster of people who decided to put their name forward for consideration. And I'd just like to say to each and every one of them that I think we heard a lot on Friday, and I think the community deserves to hear from you as well. And I hope you're not discouraged by not filling this seat, that you might put your name forward and run for council in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I would just like to say a farewell to Deputy Mayor and thank him very much for all he's done for this council and this community, not just in the past 3.5 years, but over the lifetime that he has lived here in the community. We really miss you and Kathy, and we will come and visit. So really miss you, and you've done a great job. So thank you very much for everything. And I'd like to congratulate Deb Wilson for being the successful candidate to fill the seat vacant on council, and congratulations. And as people have said before, it was a difficult decision. There were a lot of great people with great resumes and interviews that put themselves forward to serve the community. So congratulations to you, and thanks to everyone else who'd stepped up to put their name forward.
Okay, Councillor Strachan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will echo exactly what all my council colleagues have said regarding the process and so on. It was wonderful to actually meet some of these members of our community who I had maybe seen only in passing or knew by name, but didn't know, as well as we certainly got to know individuals on Friday. So thank you very much for putting yourselves forward. Debbie, congratulations. Remember this down the line. You signed up for this. So it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be rewarding, a lot of work. So thank you for joining the team. And Deputy Worship, I don't think we got to call you that tonight, did we? It was wonderful working with you. Thanks a lot, Jim. All the best to you. And I look forward to popping in with the whole fam jam and checking out your place in Cape Breton sometime. So thank you very much and safe travels.
Good. So yes, Deputy Mayor, as you know, we've said this, I think, a lot personally, but maybe not as much publicly. We didn't really know who each other was. And when I appointed a deputy mayor, I'd only met you through the campaign process. It was an excellent decision, one of the best I've made since being elected. You've served our council, you've served me, you've served the municipality with a great degree of integrity, with a lot of thought, with some good humor, with tremendous caring. And we've all benefited, I think, from a depth of relationships that you've had that gave us important context and that allowed us, I think, to maneuver as a brand new council. It's very rare in municipal politics that you get a wholesale turnover of your council. So when we came in, Jim's knowledge and depth in the community in terms of all that he brought as a business leader and as a member of an important faith community and as a volunteer and as a parent and a partner is something I think we all greatly benefited from. I said to Jim that I would say publicly what I hadn't said previously, which is thank you to Kathy, who I know is her own woman and was certainly enabling and ensuring that, Jim, you were able to make all those meetings amidst a myriad of other responsibilities and commitments. And you served council incredibly well. You served your community extremely well, not just in these 4 years, but in the last 27. I don't believe in goodbyes. I just believe in farewells and see you down the road. You're not that far away. The council North Grenville rate for your new inn, I trust, will be well advertised shortly. So thank you, Jim, for everything you've done for North Grenville over 27 years, and certainly everything you've done for council, for the municipality, and for me as mayor. Having such a strong deputy mayor was a blessing and a gift. And even though we didn't know each other before the campaign, we sure do now. And I consider you a friend. And I have a great degree of respect for you and Kathy in terms of your next move. And I'm a big supporter of evolution. So even though the timing isn't quite what we wanted it to be, it's a good move for you. It's a good move for your family. And we wish you all the best. And we'll be sending our prayers and our affections to you every step of the way, and send lots of pictures. Deputy Mayor.
Wow. I'm not a crier, but if I was, that would be something. The outpouring from the community has been overwhelming to Kathy and I. We're getting messages all the time. It makes it harder and harder for us to leave, but we have a vision. We're heading that way. Anyways, it has been overwhelming. We're almost shocked, I guess, but we loved serving this community. We love this community. We still do. We'll be back and forth. Kathy has her mother is still close by here, so she needs to be visiting her on a regular basis. So we'll be back. So all I can say is it's been an absolute pleasure for the 28 years we've been here. We've seen so much change and so many different things happen. A lot of you know that I kind of hesitantly stumbled into being a counselor, but I took it on full tilt. I love the job. 99% of the time, it's great, and it has been extremely pleasurable. And I'll tell to the public, that may be listening, but working with you guys has really been an amazing ride. I mean, I really didn't know all of you very well at all. Even Doreen, we got to know each other much better, as we ran together. John, we were just starting a relationship, but we got to know each other really well. Kristen didn't really know you at all, other than your name on a tax form. And Nancy, Nancy came out of the blue. I said, who the heck is this woman? Why is she running for mayor? Who is she? Anyways, at the end of the day, though, Nancy, you stepped up and you have taken this community on by storm to me. You've done so much work, amazing work, hard work. Try not to kill yourself, though. You have a caring, all of you have this caring for this community that blows me away. And most of the public don't get to, talk to you one-on-one like I do and be involved in the projects we're involved. So anyways, I can tell the public absolutely that there's nobody more caring than this council that I've ever seen. You don't have hidden agendas. You just want to get the work done. You want to help the. Start to cry. I got the Kleenex. Anyways, you've all done amazing work. John, super caring, especially for his roots in the urban area, but I mean, and beyond. He's loves Oxford Mills. Love that, the support he gives those people, and then the rest of the community. He has a really, he's a serious guy, but he has a really soft heart and wants to really contribute. Doreen is, Doreen, she a dog with a bone. She won't let go. If she wants to get something done, she'll work hard to get it done. And here's somebody who's still continuing to nurse after 40 some, who knows how many years, and just loves taking care of people. And she's taking care of Kathy and I tonight. We get to spend a night in her suite downstairs. So thank you for that. Beats the air mattress. All our stuff is moved. The movers came today, so we're working down. I'm working down to the wire here, so I'll be here tomorrow as well. And Kristen, you and I, we didn't know you other than from your husband. And, we may have started a slightly rocky start because we didn't know. And who's this business guy and who's this, anyways, I think our relationship has grown dramatically, and I respect everything you've done and said, and some of the projects you've worked on, even though you're working full time, have family commitments, you and Nancy with these kids running around. I don't know how you do it, but you do it and you show up and you're engaged. And anyways, love you guys. You've made my 3 years for sure. And Debbie, I can't think of a better person to step in. You're not filling the deputy mayor's shoes per se, but you're definitely sharing that council position. And I can't see anybody better than somebody like you who's been so involved in this community, so involved with council, what we do, asking us the hard questions, showing up at the council meetings, being involved in these committees, and really doing a stellar job as a chair and whatnot, what you've done. And again, in the last 3 years, 4 years, that's when I really got to know you, and I loved every minute of it. I love what you've done. Anyways, and I can't forget the staff, but there's 70 of some of them. I don't know them all. Gary, you were an amazing hire, and thank you for the hard work you're doing in our little community compared to the big ones you've been to. You've really stepped up the game for us and really made us shine. So thank you for that. And all the other staff that I've been working with, nothing but praise for everybody, what they've been doing. Anyways, I guess those are my parting words. And I just want to say thank you to all the staff and to all you guys and our community.
Thank you. A sad day, but a good day in lots of ways. So appreciate all those words, Deputy Mayor, and we'll take it home with, I think, a confirmation bylaw. I assume no council colleague has a notice of motion this evening. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, I think Ms. Babcock-Cormier, my computer battery is about to run out. Can you please read the confirmation bylaw, please?
And period of questions from the public or media relating to agenda items.
Indeed, we'll go there first. I see Paulina's on the call this evening. I think any other questions from members of the media or our community? Now is your time. Call Paulina says good for now. Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Backwell-Cormier?
No, I'm not seeing any further questions, Your Worship.
Okay. So then we'll move on to confirmation bylaw, please.
Yes, Your Worship. That bylaw 14-22 to confirm the proceedings of council at its special meeting held on February 22nd, 2022 be adopted and passed.
Would you like to move that, Councillor Sullivan? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Actually, Deputy Mayor, why don't you adjourn? I'll have you move to adjourn the meeting. So Councillor Barkley, I'll take your second for the confirmation bylaw. I'll call the question. All in favor, please. Good. And to adjourn this auspicious meeting in its own way, though a sad meeting on February 22nd, 2022, everybody is saying this is a day. This is a big day, numerically and otherwise. Deputy Mayor, over to you for your final adjournment. You'll move to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
All right. Seconder, please. Councillor Barkley, thank you. I will call the question. All in favor, please. We are adjourned. Safe journey, Deputy Mayor. Ms. Wilson, you'll be sworn in on or before the first. We'll work out those logistics. For members of the media, there is a statement coming in about 10 minutes. It'll be posted and shared shortly, so look for that. It'll provide some more context on the process and our rationale. Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Bye, Jim. Have a good night. Bye, Jim. Take care. See you soon.